What's up, everybody? Welcome back to a very epic Pokemon Rants. Just how deep can thought go? And the truth is, unless you peel back that onion and perhaps cry just a little bit, you never really know just how deep it will go. The man we have with us here today is one of the most trusted wealths of knowledge, but also one of the most well-versed contributors to the Pokemon hobby. Shaun at Squeaks Game World has been a pillar of multiple verticals in and outside of Pokemon that so many admire. Much like Tomba trying to defeat the Evo Coma pigs to really obtain what was rightfully his already, Shaun has battled more than a decade of foes and challenges, just that most of lesser would throw in the white flag and just simply give up. Now on new journeys of life, with, of course, we'll surely dive in here to today, Shaun has reinvigorated with flames that will surpass anything he's ever fathomed and perhaps become the jewels of life and collections of his heart. So let's take a deep breath as we dive deeper into thought than we ever have before and welcome Shaun at Squeaks Game World to Pokemon Wonder and to much more. Shaun, welcome to Pokemon Wonder, my friend.
Thank you, dude. That was epic. I am amped. First of all, the Tomba slide in, very nice. That you won me. I'm sold. I'm ready to be here, ready to rumble. That dude, yeah.
I was hoping I knew you'd catch it. I was like,
yeah. I'm vibing. Yeah. So yes, no, I'm excited to be here. This has been a long time coming. I think, like we talked just briefly before we came on, we had talked 7-8 months ago after Charlie came on. I was like, I love what you're doing. And you're like, hey, come on. And it took us a bit, but we got here. We're here now. And
all that matters is that we're here today. Yeah, that's all that matters.
We're here today. And I'm super excited about being here. Super excited for what we're going to chat about over the next few hours.
I love it, man. Well, I do appreciate your time. I say it to everybody, but I know that as we become fathers and change life trajectory, that time is even more valuable. So I do appreciate it. And thanks to your wife as well, Britt, and sharing the time. Thank you, Britt. I appreciate it. So Shaun, do us please the favor. And as always, as we say here, go deeper. But how did you get into the hobby? Those first experiences, maybe that first tear that you shed as you saw that Charizard, the Blastoise, the Venusaur, whatever that was for you. Actually, I think it was Heart Gold, Soul Silver, right?
Yeah, as I say, do you want me to start way back at childhood, or do you want me to start at, kind of where I re-entered the hobby?
No, give me like the early day, like I'm 6.
Okay. Give me that story. Somewhere Ernie's already like, I'm all set, shutting it off. Like, no, when I was a kid, I remember Pokemon was starting to get big. People were talking about it, and we didn't get Kids WB, which was channel 25. I'd come home. And one day I'd come home every day. We had one of those old turn antennas.
I was going to say, tell me you had the rabbit ears with like the double dials.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. We had one of the old turn antennas. You had to turn it, and then we try to get it to come in every day. Wouldn't come in. And one
Did you have the tinfoil?
Yeah. Yep. And you had to try to get everything to line up, and I could never get it. And one day I came home, and it wasn't clear. It was like kind of the snowy when your TV would get snowy, but you could hear it through it. We were in, baby. And right from there, I was hooked. Eventually, it got a little better. Finally, we just got Kids WB. And so that was great. But I fell in love with Pokemon. I asked for Pokemon for my birthday. I got a video game. It was Pokemon Blue, which is crazy because I'm a Pokemon Red guy now. But Pokemon Blue as a kid. And so I finally got to play, and then I just, I deep dove into it, trading cards, it didn't matter what it was, the Topps cards, the little battle coins, the marbles. If it had Pokemon on it, I was in.
Cereal.
So for me, it was, it was something I liked to do. Everyone was into it at the time, but the cards, I actually really did want to play the game. I wanted to explore. I loved games as a kid. I one of the first board games I ever learned was Monopoly, believe it or not. I fell asleep halfway through playing it with my mom, but she left it all set up so we could finish it later. Probably wasn't even playing it right, but I loved games as a kid. And even till this day, I still love games. And so I really wanted to play. And my parents, they didn't know how to play. So they took me to a local game store in my small hometown of LaGrange, Indiana called Give Me Space. It's not still there today. But they, it was my mom actually took me up on New Year's Eve. She had heard from a coworker that they were going to run this like New Year's bash thing, and they were going to have pizza. Pizza's my favorite food. I love pizza. And so what a match made in heaven. So she took me up there, and I took, my cards. I didn't have a deck or anything because I didn't really know how to play. And I was just watching all of these kids much older than me playing this game, and I'm seeing Blastoise on the table, Venusaur on the table. And my little kid mind is like,
what is happening?
Yes. Like, first of all, that guy didn't just have one Blastoise. He's got 3 Blastoise.
Right.
Like, what is happening here?
He's the king.
Because we're kids. We're like, are there even 3 Blastoise in the world? Like, I didn't know. Like, I just have what I have. And so we went, and I told my mom, I've got to come back. And shout out to Derek Farber out there. He's still a TO for Pokemon to this day. He was the local TO of my store. Yeah, so he does like regionals and some of the bigger events. But he was also the TO of my local little hometown store. Wow. And he told my mom, we do league every, whatever day it was. Feel free to bring him on in. We'll kind of keep an eye on him, make sure that he doesn't get up to any trouble or anything. And so my mom would drop me off with enough money to get a Mountain Dew and a little bag of Doritos, and I'd be off to league, and I'd start trading and playing and learned how to play and everything. And that's kind of where, my hobby journey went till about Legendary Collection, when the Charizard and Raichu theme decks came out. Charizard's was called Lava, I think. I don't remember the Raichu one. I bought a Charizard one because you could get Charizard in it even though it was non-holo, and that was cool. And then I kind of faded out into Yu-Gi-Oh. That was kind of my last foray with Pokemon. I got into Yu-Gi-Oh until late high school. And then I got out of Yu-Gi-Oh, went off to college and everything. And then when I was in college, I actually found my way back to Pokemon. I was just hanging out with some friends one night, and we started talking about our old days of Pokemon. And me, being just an impulsive spender at the time, was like, I'm going to catch the 9 bus. I'm going straight to Target. I'm going to buy some cards. So I go out and buy cards. I don't even know what I'm buying at this point. I'm just buying packs. And before I get home and open the packs, I have to look up like what I'm trying to get. And I decided I'm going to build a Mew Prime Gengar Prime deck, like a Lost Zone deck.
Okay.
And I swear on my life, and I have a friend that can validate this that was in the call. His name is Jeremy Steele. I pulled 2 Mew Primes in triumphant packs back to back, and I was hooked.
Wow.
I was in. I like game over. I was right back in. Like Gambler's Fallacy. I've won. I'm in. Pokemon's got me. And so I was sold again. I never left. I ended up building decks. I traveled to a local league. So I went to Indiana University in Bloomington. Our local, the closest local league was up in Terre Haute, Indiana. So traveled an hour up there. Met some friends through that and started going to local league. Met a bigger group of friends called the Hover Cats that we formed a Pokemon team to play competitively, and started traveling around the country playing the game.
Wow.
Yeah.
Got serious real quick.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like if there's anything that's true about me, it's when I start something, I just head first into
go all in.
Completely all in. Yeah. And so for me, it was everything I still loved as a kid. It just reignited immediately. And I, not to like dive too deep quickly into Pokemon and kind of their philosophy, but what they're so great at is just capturing that, right? Like that they can reacquisition a customer like it's nothing. Their tendrils in me never went away. They were just dormant. And the second I found my way in, it was the Pandora's box open. Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, I started playing and traveling around, and I absolutely loved it. I flipped cards while I was doing that to kind of pay for it, because I was a broke college kid.
Of course.
And so, you win prizes and do things, you sell that stuff so you can fund the next trip, the next tournament, and we were the kind of group that, if we had to split a hotel room 12 ways and carve out floor space for everyone to sleep, that's what we did,
no problem.
Because it was about the journey. And so we did that until about 2015, when I was working at a publishing company, and that's
when you did Fort Wayne Nationals, right?
That was your last one. Regionals.
Okay.
Yeah. So, the first event I ever vended was actually Fort Wayne States. It was Indiana States, but it was up in Fort Wayne. And Derek Farber was the TO of that. So he was the one that kind of gave me that opportunity to get in, because getting into those events was not easy at the time. But he had known me, from when I was a kid and everything, and thought it was cool. So he kind of gave me that opportunity, and that, gave me my foot in the door. And then, of course, the community itself that I'd come to make a ton of friends really rallied behind me, because I was kind of one of the first of the players to venture into like what if I could make this a career? So I worked at this publishing company, and I found that I was making more money flipping cards than I was at my job. And I was like, man, what if I just like tried this full time? And
sounds like a similar question.
Sorry, what was that?
Sounds like a similar question we all ask ourselves at some point.
Yes, exactly. And it got to the point where, I kind of felt, the upward mobility here is not going to happen in the time frame I want. Let's just take the leap. What's the worst that happens? I have to go back and find another 9-to-5 job that, I'm making a little bit above minimum wage. There's not far to fall from where I'm at this point. Let's go for it. And so, I got that opportunity through Derek. And then I took my business legit right away. I think I had $2,000 in the bank, most of which I had to pay out my lease to move. And then I called a distributor to get set up because I registered with the state. I got my business license and all that. And the distributor's like, oh yeah, just send us a link to your website and we'll get you set up. What website?
Okay, let me create one.
Yeah. So I literally
give me just a minute.
Great. That's in development. Actually, I'll have it sent over tomorrow. Stayed up all night on Wix, 2015, building a website out of nothing. The worst throw. Like, there's no way that lady on the phone looked at that and thought, I don't know who you're having developed this, but you can get your money back. Hey,
here's some product in the meantime. Right?
Yeah. And this was back when, Pokemon was still ramping up and getting going. So like getting it at a distributor, especially for Pokemon, online stores, they were still taking them. Today it's much harder to get in as an online only. Back then, it was literally a phone call and an application and a half thrown together website, and you were good. And so I managed to get in, and then I started running the store from there. And here we are, almost 10 years later, and still doing it.
Who says probably look like Hills also came in?
Probably not even that good, honestly. Probably not.
It had less graphics.
Yes. So yeah, no, and so that's where we are today. So then have done that journey since. Tons of trials and tribulations and stories and journeys in between there that I'm sure we'll explore. But that was kind of the start of it. Was that trip on the 9 bus to Target where I bought some what turned out to be Triumphant and Heart Gold Soul Silver packs and pulled some new primes, and it's been my life ever since.
Lost Box. It's funny because I just built the Lost Box for Giratina recently, so I was like,
the modern version of it, which is sweet that it's come back. Pokemon's kind of cyclical in that regard. I think the modern version way better than the old version, which is cool. But yeah, it's cool, and it's
I've
cool
enjoyed it.
I haven't played since I think my last event was 2014. And yet here we have something that we can relate to with each other on through the game.
In a 10-year gap.
Yeah, with a 10-year gap. That's so cool about Pokemon. I love that. So,
but I thought you played in Fort Wayne regionals and you made it to day 2. And on day 2, you played your Ho-Oh deck just for fun.
I did. So maybe it was 2015 because I know it kind of lined up right with it was kind of like my last hurrah. And so I wasn't sure if I was going to get. I remember I played Crazy Punch, which was Mega Kangaskhan at the time. A lot of coin flipping. It was a super fun deck. I always gravitated more towards decks that you could run a rainbow variety of Pokemon and kind of move your energies around. So it played with Aromatisse and it moved the energy. And I just bubbled into cut. I made it on resistance at 32nd for day 2. So I already knew my climb on day 2 was a major uphill battle. Like I was going to have to go 5-1 or something like that.
We had first loss. You're like, yeah, I'm good.
Correct. Exactly. We had a huge friend group. So all of the Hovercats were in town. A bunch of our auxiliary friends from across the country had came in for this regional, and everyone was getting together at a house that night. And I just kind of decided, you know what, this is kind of my last hurrah before I take this thing full time and start really doing this. I just want to enjoy my night with my friends. And then, you know what? Tomorrow, I'm probably not going to make it anyways. I'm going to run it back with Ho-Oh. Terrible format. Who cares? And I played Ho-Oh. I think the first person I got paired against was Zach Lesage. He played Donphan, which back then Donphan used the quick turn or whatever for one fighting. And absolutely cooked me. And I was like, yep, that's the day. I think I played like 3 Virizion Genesect. And I mean, I rolled them Ho-Oh. That was a great matchup for Ho-Oh. And I would just give them the win because I was like, I'm not going anywhere. These guys are actually playing, So I remember, I think one of the most memorable things from that day 2 was Kyle Sukovic still played Puka. And so he was still playing before he had started with Pokemon and working there. He was kind of one of the first players that went and worked for Pokemon. and him and Jaywitz, Josh were paired against each other, and Josh was beatboxing, and a lot of us never knew Josh could beatbox. And so we're sitting there, and Josh is beatboxing, and I was like, "This is pretty impressive." And I don't know why. That's just one of the most memorable little tangents that I remember sitting there. So, but yeah, so Ho was kind of my last hurrah that I did play that day too.
I love it. I love it. Good story. Good story.
Yeah.
So from that early childhood static memory on the Rabbit Ears TV to running back to Target on the bus at night to spend money you probably shouldn't have spent.
Correct.
You're now on this trajectory where it leads us kind of where you are today. But if we take a step back, you mentioned the college. What were you studying at the time? What was your degree in?
So I double majored in criminal justice and history, which nothing like what I'm doing now, criminal justice. It was one of those things that, I had a knack for it. I was really passionate about it. Unfortunately, it's one of those things where the way it's framed in university is, you're going to go out there, you're going to make huge change. It's going to be great. When you actually go out there and try to make change, you realize just kind of how the system is and the hurdles of that. And right. It's not that I don't have a massive amount of respect for the people that do try to really improve that system and make it better. It's just, I very quickly realized this is not my life calling. And I, as a person, tend to wear my emotions on my sleeve. I'm not incredibly thick-skinned. When we talk about YouTube later, I'm sure we'll bring up stories about that. And I just realized this was not the path for me. And unfortunately for history, there's not a ton of career opportunities with just a BA in history. And so while I think it's actually one of the most useful supplemental degrees that you can get, not very useful as a primary degree. In hindsight, should have just went to the Kelley School of Business. I was at the university with one of the best business schools in the nation. I had tons of friends in it. Should have just done that and gotten some degree in business, but maybe I wouldn't be here today. So, we're happy with what we did. But yeah, it's I've definitely looked back on it and just thought those are some expensive pieces of paper. I'm sure it made me more of a well-rounded person. I learned a lot, but
I think so. Yeah.
You think about it from time to time. Will they ever be relevant? Probably not.
Well, and I remember a comment you made, I think even on the Collectibles Conversations podcast, something along the lines of understanding, the repetition of history and being able to move forward from that foundation.
Yes.
Right. And so it's these little things that will change your trajectory of life. Yeah, for sure.
100%. And that's where I would like, to me, it is one of the best supplemental. I'm laughing. I know I see Dan's comments too.
Yeah.
I see, like, it's one of the best supplemental degrees that you can get. It really has allowed me to have not just a better perspective in this industry, but I think what history really allows you to do is understand that history and current events and everything, they're told from a vantage point. It allows you to be a lot more empathetic towards all different kinds of people from all different walks of life, because you understand that a lot of narratives that are crafted in society are going to be crafted from a perspective that aids the person crafting them. And when you try to strip that back, especially when you're looking back historically, a lot of the things that how we look at them today is not how they were looked at in the current time. And in learning to really understand how information travels, how people interact with information, how people interact with each other because of that, that's the kind of thing that, in learning about that degree really taught me that I think I have really been able to apply in my life and has helped me kind of grow and mature as a person. So.
Yeah, and it's many of those things. Yeah, and I've said it a few times, but Steve Jobs always says, you look back and you can connect those dots, but there's no way you could have done it when you were sitting there in class.
Sure.
Stressed out about the homework. It's like, this is going to help me be a Pokemon master.
Like, Like at the time, my biggest thoughts are like, I need to graduate, and I like playing Pokemon. Never did that. Oh boy, how can these come together and turn into something? So.
Dan, appreciate the super chat, my friend. We got to know, was there a secret handshake pose for the hover cats? Like, yeah, give us the deep down
It's
under.
kind of interesting. I'm curious, Dan. You should put in chat. I'm curious how you even know about this. But first of all, Dan, thanks for the $5 for supporting Pokemon Wonders. Amazing stream podcast. Everyone should be throwing money right now at the screen. Let's get those donos in. Come on, guys. We can pump these numbers up. But the handshake pose was it's called an edge pick, and what it was is the whole group would get into one picture. You would have two people in the front that would go down on one knee and like put their hands together, and then everyone in the back would cross their arms. I don't know where this originated from. I don't know why we did it, but we did it at every event. Like the unbelievable amount of pictures that this is, and even to this day,
I love it.
We just went to a wedding. I missed it because we had to put Roman to bed. But the group did an edge pick at the wedding this year in 2024. Like it's still the tradition just now lives to this day. And the key to it all is when you take the picture.
Hover cats for life.
Yes, hover cats for life. Everyone has to have stone cold serious faces. You don't smile, you don't react, just and that's what it is. And that's what we did everywhere we went. There was that, and then the other thing was the hover huddles. So this became big at the tournaments. Before the tournament would start, the team would get together. We would all get in a big group, put our arms around each other, and we would rock back and forth. And then somebody would jump in the center, put their hands in, everyone would put their hands in, and we would say wild and free on 3. 1, 2, 3, wild and free. And it actually got so big that there was another team out of Michigan, Team Warp Point. Shout out to them, great guys. And one of you guys may actually know one of them, Ryan Scott Graham. He is now a famous musician. He's always been a famous musician, but they used to be in a band called Good Luck Varsity back in the day. Now he's in a band called State Champs. But anyways, they also, one year at Nationals, they were kind of like our sister team or whatever. We all get in a big circle and we do a massive one at Nationals, like huge. And this thing is so loud, the whole room shuts down and listens. Pokemon took a picture of it and it was on Pokemon's organized play homepage for I don't know, probably like 6 or 7 years.
That's awesome.
And so, yeah, and it was up there. And so that was, that's our claim to fame right there. So yeah, those were kind of our two little things that we did.
Which guy were you? Would you want to kneel down with the hand grasp with your
I was a lot of times just because I'm one of the shorter ones. So we tried to keep the taller ones in the back. I'm one of the shorter of the group, so you kind of put the shorter ones in the front. But otherwise, you get relegated out to the edge of the frame. So
I get it. Oh, I did see a couple of gifted memberships. Appreciate it, guys. Got Hoot Hoot in the house, dropping 5 in. Thank you, Hoot Hoot. And I saw early on, we also had 10 dropped by our man, Shining Cards and Collectibles. Appreciate you, Ray. Thank you, sir. Much appreciated.
Yes, thank you, guys. That's awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Not necessary, but appreciated. So, Shaun, as we look at this from the perspective now of your criminal justice degree, history.
I thought you were going to say my criminal history. I was like, whoa.
We'll get to that later.
We're only
I got the records.
In. Come on.
I got them printed in. We'll do that at like 2 hours in. Don't worry.
Yeah.
And then now into, I think you said publishing. So how did you go from that to a publishing job? What was that kind of timeline like?
Yeah. So when I graduated, I did not find a job in a career path that I really wanted at the time. And, to be honest, like to be quite frank, I was pretty lazy. I didn't go to class a lot in college. My grades were good. I did really well on exams. I did not show up to class. Many classes at IU are attendance based. So my grades suffered in that regard. My senior year, I got put on academic probation, my junior year, I got put on academic probation, not because my grades were bad, but because I was not attending class and the professors were submitting that. And, you go to class if they have an attendance requirement. So for me, the reality was I was just burnt out on school. At this point, it just, I was burnt out. And so when I graduated, jumping into the next thing was not my biggest thought. I did not jump in very quickly. And so then it kind of got to the point of like, I've got bills to pay. And so I just need a job now. And so I literally just went on Indeed, And I started applying to jobs, and there was an entry-level check-in coordinator position at a publishing company, and I went and applied, and I got a job, and then I was like, great, I got a job. Now I guess we're good.
What do I do?
Yep. And so now,
How does
I'll learn it
work?
from there. Like, what do you know about publishing? Nothing. That's it. I've read a lot of books. Does that count? And so I learned from there. So
okay. And well, what did you do while you were there?
So a lot of what I did was actually the initial coordination with the authors. So the authors would get brought in. You would kind of help them get their material set up, kind of figure out like what their directional goals were, and then kind of help work them through the process. So it was more of like a white glove self-publishing type thing.
Okay.
And there were different steps in the process, and my step was to kind of get them to the point that they were ready to go through every other step of the process. And it was fun. I met a lot of very interesting people. It definitely gave me my first taste of corporate culture, and which was definitely something I needed. Taught me how to grow up to some degree. I was part of the lack of going to class, lack of work ethic was that I was just still pretty immature at the time, and at age. We all have it. And, I'm not shy of it. I like to be pretty transparent about my past. I think, where I've learned to grow can help others grow. And so I had a lot of growing up to do. And that, I think that job was kind of the first steps of helping me do that. And then, obviously transitioning out of that to the store helped me with the rest of the way. So,
it's funny for me because I don't see you as a lazy person. Now, I know you're a procrastinator, but you're also an overthinker.
Sure.
So a lot of these things really are contradicting because you run to Target and you just start traveling the world playing regionals and TCG, and it's like, yeah, let's just go with it. And that's completely against like, hey, let's have a plan. Let's sort this out. Let's figure it out. It's like, no, I'm gonna go buy some packs.
If you look at who I am today versus who I was back then, it's almost like opposite sides of the coin. And part of that, I think, is a lot of that free spirit, uninhibited nature was tied to that immaturity, impulsivity. Like, so since no topic's too deep, and that's why we're here. Back in college, I've talked about these stories before. I definitely had a spending addiction. Like true full blown, like I could go in a store and know like I cannot spend money, and I would spend it anyways. And I could not control that impulsivity. And I think part of that was learning and understanding that about myself. And then I think another part of it was also learning to grow and mature and recognizing that like getting to a point where, you kind of go to high school, you go to college, but you're always still in this environment where you're protected, right? Like you get your outs if you do something wrong. You kind of go out into the world. There's not going to be those excuses anymore, especially the job I stepped into. If you act immature, or you act out, or you say something you're not supposed to say, or whatever, you're going to get called to the carpet on it. And I remember one of my bosses that I had that I got along with really well. I wanted to vie for a raise, and I sat down with her, like we set up a meeting, and she wanted me to talk about why I should get a raise. And my whole pitch was based on the wages of everyone else in the work that they did. And she just tore me apart, just absolutely like, I actually can't believe this is like what you would come in here with. And what I learned that day was that like, you don't have to bring others down to build yourself up, but also that like, there's a risk. Like what I should have been doing was selling my own merits. My own merits would have sold.
What do you bring to the table
in itself? So we ended up, I learned from it. I learned a very valuable lesson. I also just, I learned a very valuable lesson about just growing up. Right. And that like, the world is not going to deal with your immaturity. Like it's going to pass you by, and you've got to catch it up. And so that was like one of the pivotal moments. I mean, there's been many, but that was one of the more pivotal moments I can really remember thinking like, okay, I need to grow up as a person. I need to mature. I need to improve on myself. And we ended up having another meeting like a month later, where I did do a pitch based on, my merits and the amount of accounts I was managing and things like that. And I did end up getting a raise, and the conversation went much better. And it really taught me a lot about kind of how I should conduct myself in the world. So shout out to her. She knows who she is. But she got me on the right track for sure. So
yeah, those corporate jobs, as I mentioned to you in our kind of pre-conversation, and people here have heard me say before, I was in one for 21 plus years at the same company, and they teach you so much, and I'm so grateful for that time. It's something that I wouldn't change for anything, but not what I want to do forever. So
sure. Yeah, absolutely understand.
Apparently we earned another 5 based on the excellent lore that we laid out there. So thank you, Dan. And then
if that's the benchmark, you might retire after this thing, because we can really go deep in the annals of history. So,
and then we had shining cards and collectibles drop another 20. Man, thank you, Ray.
Keep it going,
I appreciate
guys.
it. I appreciate it, guys.
He
Thank
deserves
you so much. I really appreciate it. I think somebody said that's that whatnot money.
Hey, speaking of whatnot and that, I just have to say, I see Radar popped in here. He said I'm late. Welcome, Radar. I just have to let you know, everyone, you need to watch this podcast, not just live, but as many VODs as you can. John got, I think it's like 1,000 or 1.4 thousand views. We have to beat that. We need to beat the amount of views that John got when he was on this podcast. This is non-negotiable. Rally the troops. Tell everyone you know that we're live right now. We have to do that. This is important.
That was funny. Thanks for stopping in, John. Appreciate it, man. Good to see you, bud. All right, man. So we're in. We're deep already, but I love it. I absolutely love it. But I do want to jump over to where you are in your space of collecting, because in all my research, as I think about your collection, I saw you were into graded games. I saw that obviously you're collecting consoles with your little pop-in with Ernie and the Spicy Boys TV shout out there. Good time there. But I also didn't see a lot of what's happening as you moved, you transition. I see a little bit there in the background, but your collection kind of remains foggy, if you will.
Sure.
Yeah. So tell me, what are you doing now? What's been the core of your collection, and what are you looking for?
So when I started the store, I can already hear Ernie like on my little the little Ernie on my shoulder, like, oh, here we go. Everything he starts has to date back. Yeah. Ernie haunts me is the answer. But no, when I started the store, knowing what I knew about myself from college, the impulsivity things, bad with money, and I'd really like turned things around. I knew this is a huge responsibility that I'm taking on. This is, I'm going to have to manage my money better than I've ever managed it. I'm going to have to take this extremely seriously. I'm going to have to give it all I've got. It's part of why I kind of retired from playing, was so that I could focus on what I needed to focus on. And part of that was recognizing the conflict for me between running a business and collecting, right? I think all of us that have done businesses in this industry know how easy it is to intermingle inventory with collection, convince yourself I'm buying this thing to sell, and really you're buying it because you want to put it on your shelf. And so I just had to kind of tell myself, Pokemon's off the table for that. Like it's flat off the table for collecting.
Wow.
And now I've waned on that a little bit over the years. But definitely from where I started, where I used to be, it was one of those things where I had to, at least for the first few years, I just cold turkey, like, we're not going to collect, we're going to grow this thing. We're going to do what we got to do. I think for the first, at least while I lived in the Crap Shack, and we can get to the Crap Shack in a little bit, I think the only thing I ever held back was one magical clock from the Pokemon Center. And that was just because I truly didn't know if I would ever see one again. It was one of my favorite pieces that I'd ever seen. I had bought one and left it in a box for the first 4 years that I owned it because I didn't have anywhere to hang it up, and the Crap Shack was not a place to hang it up. And so other than that, I didn't collect for the longest time. But that was also why I didn't really carry video games beyond just the occasional like good deal that I found, because I did still want to collect video games. And I felt if I was going to start carrying those, then it would start to blur that line, and I would be running that, and until I felt that I was good enough at managing this work ethic, maturity, everything, to be able to delineate between the two, that it just wasn't a good idea. And so those were just limiters that I had to place on myself and recognize where my own personal weaknesses are. Now today, I like to collect a little more. I definitely have things that I like to collect. I do collect graded games. I've got a lot of those behind me. I collect a lot of Fire Emblem memorabilia, especially around the trading card game. So there's a trading card game in Japan called Fire Emblem Cypher. It's one of my
I'm not familiar.
favorite tactics series games. So kind of like Final Fantasy Tactics, those types. You move little characters on a grid, they battle type thing. You have a team. I've always really liked, the art style around it. I've really liked the mechanics of it. I'm a huge strategy game player. And then a lot of what I like in Pokemon are things that you don't see often. The things like the magical clock that when they come around, especially if they have functional utility beyond just something that sits around. Like the clock I use every day. It hangs in my kitchen now. I get to see it every single day. It makes me happy when I see it. And so that's kind of where I try to lean into. But yeah, Pokemon for me, it's tough because you get so desensitized to so many of these things that even, back in the day, I used to hunt gold stars, crystals, and shinings like it was my job, because it was. But that was my thing. And part of it was because I really did love them, and I knew I could cycle through them. Whereas, today, if I'm being honest, I don't know that they do hold as much like love in my heart for them, because I've seen so many, I've held so many, and I like that you brought up collecting, because I'm sure this surprises a lot of people. Wow, he doesn't collect a ton of Pokemon things. I do have Pokemon things. I've got a graded silver. I've got a few of the world's consoles, things like that. But for me, it's one of those, it doesn't really pull at the heartstrings anymore. And I really like to get some kind of an emotional feel out of what I collect. And I think that that's something that we in the hobby don't talk about enough, is when you start to do this type of thing full time, the more in it you get and the longer you do it, almost kind of the less of an appreciation you have for some of this stuff. And, it's why I've always tried to keep myself learning more and acquiring more knowledge, so that I do continue to have an appreciation for the products that I carry, and maintain that appreciation for why the customers, like what I'm carrying. And so, yeah, I would say that a lot of my collection today is around things like that. Now, I will say the one thing that is Pokemon that I do collect, that probably not financially responsible of me, but I love them, are uncut sheets. Boy, do I love uncut sheets. Holy cow. You want to talk
Inspired by Rusty?
Yeah. Oh, don't even get me started on Rusty's uncut sheets, man. And that's where my love came to fruition, was Rusty. Rusty made a video back in
2012, I think it was
2013 of all of his uncut sheets. And, one of them that he had was an Ancient Mew sheet. And I was like, wow. Yeah, Ancient Mew from my childhood. You go to the movie, you get the card. How cool is that? I went to the movie with my mom. I know, super cool. Love my mom. Thanks, Mom, for taking me to the movie. And I got the card and I loved it. And I saw that he had an uncut sheet. And I was like, how cool is that? And then just how cool are all of these sheets, right? They're historical artifacts. They're pieces of the history of the game. You don't see them. They weren't sold, and they're art. To me, it's one of the closest things. You've got original art that you can have the artist do, but it's one of the closest production things that you're ever going to get to art that is of a size that you can really just hang it on a wall and admire it. And that aspect of it, I love. And on the Ancient Mew topic, I also actually have one of those sheets now. I years ago at Gen Con, a good friend of mine, Jim Baruso, he runs Graded Power primarily in Magic, but does a lot with, Wizards of the Coast, so Pokemon and everything. Him and I were chatting, and he was showing me a bunch of test print Magic things, all kinds of crazy stuff. And I just, I was like, do you have any crazy stuff from Pokemon? He's like, of course I do. This is just how this guy's demeanor is. I said, well, if you ever have you ever come across an Ancient Mew uncut sheet, you let me know. And
he goes, I got two.
he literally said, oh, I've got one. I was like, all right, Jim. I'm sure
whatever.
You do. Like, no, I have one. I was like, well, when you get home, when you find it, you let me know and make me a number. 3 years go by and I never hear a word about it. So I'm like, okay, Jim was pulling my leg.
Right.
One day, one random, probably Wednesday or something, Jim messages me like around COVID time. Like, I know we were doing collectible conversations at the time. Hey, found that uncut Mew sheet. You still interested in it? Yeah, of course I am. And he had also found one of those double-sided rocket sheet with the Spectra Hollow test print on it. Mine was actually one of the ones that CGC used for the article on it. And he, so he made me a deal on both. because I really wanted the Mew sheet. But if I can buy both and get a better deal, of course I'm going to do that. Right. And so he made me a deal on both, and I bought them, and I got it. But yeah, Rusty is the uncut sheet god of this industry for sure. So,
and they can really, and I saw the one that you showed. I think it was Fossil that you showed on your pop in on the Spicy Boys TV. They can really showcase as a nice piece of art in your home, and it is a different perspective of how you can collect and enjoy. Because once you can hang it on the wall and just truly enjoy it, which was my joke to Rusty with his latest purchase on his uncut sheet or partial sheet. I was like, Rusty, just don't put this one in the stack. Put it somewhere you can enjoy it.
Yeah. Don't just put it away. Like, Rusty, if you're ever going to listen to this, I know you probably have no clue who I am. You've got to get a space and just put them all up. And then just invite people over to look at them. Like, just, they're so cool. And yeah, I saw that he got the big acrylic stands that he can, like, and everyone that went to Collect the Con got to look at them. Of course, so jealous. I saw them in pictures. So cool. Cool. They're one of my favorite things in the hobby. I absolutely love it. I wish, in Pokemon that we saw, them lean a little more into kind of, allowing them out there either through like prize walls or things like that. Magic and One Piece, a lot of these other companies, Wizards of the Coast, they really do a lot of those through kind of organized play and stuff like that. So it's more cool. Accepted, whereas kind of here it's a little more taboo. I hope someday that transition occurs, because I really think they're great, and I truly think everyone should get to own one. And the more accessible they are, the more affordable they are. So
fully agree. I can't wait to have my own one day.
Yes, no, definitely.
I love it. All right, so if you're really pulling out of collecting because you know yourself so well, there's one question that lingers with me, Shaun, that I don't really hear a clear answer for. And yes, I get the self-awareness perspective that you say, okay, hey, I can't just go into a store and spend all my money. This is not healthy. It put me into a bad financial situation. But there probably had to be some trigger event that said, look, I got to make a change. I have to force myself to do this. Because I can't imagine it was just, it's a Wednesday. Let me just stop doing what I've been doing.
Let me just change my life around and improve myself. Yeah.
So what was that event that forced you to do that?
Yeah. So when I was in college, I flipped video games. And anyone that knew me in college would know that our dorm room was stacked to the brim with games. Because back then, I mean, you could do a garage sale tour on a weekend and load your car up to the brim. It wasn't like today where everyone has a cell phone, everybody's a flipper, their own brand, all that. It was, you could acquire that stuff in as much as you wanted. Easy. I was, and for me, I was always really good at all of the aspects of kind of buy, sell, trade. I just didn't enjoy all of the aspects. So I could find the deals and I could sell them, but I didn't have the discipline to sell them. I would always convince myself, I'm going to sell it. I'm going to sell it. But I would buy as much as my budget would allow until I was on the brim. And then it would force me into having to sell stuff. It would force me into having to put something up to list it. And so a lot of the gains that I was getting on these really good finds, I was giving up in the expense of not allowing myself to sell them at the opportune times. And it got to the point where one time I could not sell it at the opportune time. And my student loan tuition was coming, or like my tuition bill was coming due. And, luckily I have a really good, like nuclear family. My parents were really great to me. But they were hard on me. They were critical of this situation because there was no reason that I should have ever been in it. I had a scholarship to college. I had all of the, student loan money that I needed to make sure that my tuition was paid. So the fact that my tuition bill is coming due and I do not have the money available to pay it, that was pretty critical. Right? If they don't bail me there, I'm dropping out of college. And, in my family, I was first generation college kid. My sister and I, we were both first gen. Or my dad went to night school eventually, but like they didn't go through traditional college. So my dad was Amish.
Right.
And so he, Rumspringa and all that. So they, that wasn't their generation. It was less common then.
Understood.
So my dad, who always wanted to get to go to school and didn't because he had to leave work on the farm and all that. And he eventually went back and did night school and stuff. School was a privilege. Like getting to go to school was a privilege. So like this situation, like taking this for granted, like unacceptable where I came from. And
was there a heart-to-heart conversation with Dad?
Oh, in our family, we call them come to Jesus meetings, and there was definitely a come to Jesus meeting. Yes, definitely. Thank goodness for my mom is kind of the barrier between my father and I. But yeah, so there definitely was the hard conversation. It was much more, my dad was always more of like the stern, angry one, right? My mom's more like the soft balance. And in this situation, it was, I'm just disappointed. Like, just I'm so disappointed I can't even speak, kind of thing. Not
That's
even
almost
mad.
worse.
And
That's worse.
It was because I know that his like default switch in his head, like, a lot of my traits I get from my dad, his default switch in his head is anger. And so the fact that that's not his default here, that I know how bad I messed up. And so it was, they helped me get the tuition paid. I cleared out the inventory, got myself set up again.
Okay.
But it was a lot of the, and I realized I needed to make a change, but it was a lot of the ramifications that came after that really made me realize how much I needed to grow up. So to give an example,
yeah, I was gonna say you have to say something about that.
yeah, like holidays, for instance. My parents would no longer give me cash as a gift. They would give me gift cards, things like that. And, so that they would know I'm not just going to go out and blow it randomly, things like that, to where, or like if they, every once in a while they would give us some money for like food in college, and things like that. They would send me food gift cards instead of sending me cash like they did to my sister, because they wouldn't trust that I wasn't going to go blow it on something else. And that really opened my eyes to, like, they don't even trust me to manage my own money. Why should they? Why should they? I've demonstrated no ability to manage my own funds at this point. And, and I was raised in a household where I was taught, like, you need to budget, you need to learn to save, you need to do all these things. I almost
so they were teaching you as a kid. Okay.
Yeah. I almost think that there was some degree of maybe that was stressed so much on me that it pushed me further away from it. But like, there's no excuse. Yeah. There really is no excuse. And so getting to that point where it's like, wow, my decisions are emotionally impacting the people that I love in my life, it's time for a change. And that's where then I learned that I need to grow up. I need to just get better work ethic. I need to show up. I need to be present. And now I've probably taken that to the hyper opposite end, where now I'm like a workaholic and way too extreme with it. But
super
that kind of goes
planning,
back to the impulsivity, and I dive in on everything, right? I don't really live in the center. I live at the poles. And so, if this end wasn't going to work, hopefully this end does. And now it's kind of learning to manage that end and kind of try to rein it back a little bit.
Okay. So you've restricted yourself from collecting.
To some degree. I would say today I'm more loose with it as I found more success with the business. If you went and look at my console collection, nobody would say that I'm restricted.
I was going to say, the fuzzy controller Xbox will say otherwise.
Xbox, the fuzzy controllers, the Swarovski DSs. Yeah, I definitely collect. I definitely splurge. I just try to be more pragmatic with it and, chase things that I truly think I'm going to want for a long time, as opposed to something that I want right now, and then 3 months I don't want it anymore and I'm selling it again.
We talked about it there in the introduction, Shaun, and I would love to hear maybe a few, if you would, stories about those early days of video games. Because if you were playing Tamba, for example, on PS1, you probably also had Super Nintendo, leading into that, and a couple other things. So tell me some of those childhood memories of playing the games, because it sounds like games are really a core at your heart, along with Pokemon. But video games seems to have a very special place.
They absolutely do. I have to real quick before I answer this. Thrifty just wrote, Heritage Auctions love Squeaks Game World. They sure do. I'm sure. I'm sure they absolutely do. Yeah, it's funny. Good comment, Thrifty. But yeah, video games, super close place in my heart. I growing up when I was really young, didn't have any video game consoles at the time. My parents didn't play video games. My sister wasn't really into them initially. And
she's older or younger?
My sister is older. She's 2 years older than I am. And so, when I grew up, I had a lot of like action figures, Legos, things like that. But my cousin Joel always had video games. He had an NES. And so when I was over at his house, we'd play the NES, which kind of got me like, I really wanted a video game console when I was a kid. And you know, I was a little young actually for the NES, but that was more his era. So he's a little older than I am. And one year for my birthday, he had put his NES in like this massive collection of games in their garage sale. And my mom and dad decided to buy it out of the garage sale and give me that for my birthday. And so I go from no video games to an NES with like 30 games. Yeah, something huge. I remember on that birthday, I went and hooked it up. I was so excited. And everyone's like having this birthday party, and I'm just like in a room playing the NES by myself. Like, you know, people keep coming in. I'm like, no. I'm playing, you know, I'm playing Mario.
You don't understand. It's my first console. Get out.
This is a big deal. And so absolutely loved video games. From the NES, I ended up skipping Super Nintendo just by the time I was kind of to the point where, you know, I was asking for video games for Christmas. By the time the NES wore off, N64 was already coming out. I had bought so we used to have garage sales at our house, and
we did too.
I would run a little lemonade stand at the garage sales.
Nice.
I'm sure that's not a surprise to me.
Yeah.
So I've got my own tray. I'm making my lemonade. I'm, you know, dealing out money, and I saved up enough. And my dad, this kind of goes back to the savings thing of to what degree and what age he was trying to instill this. I was a young kid, and he would make us deals that if we could save our garage sale money for 6 months, he would double it. And the first few times that was never going to happen. My sister always did it. I didn't. But finally, one time I did do it, and I saved up and I saved up and I doubled it. And I remember going to KB Toys, and I bought,
love it.
I bought I'm really dating myself here. Go to KB Toys. I buy a Game Boy Pocket. So the ones that it was a red one, it wasn't even in color. And I get Super Mario Land 2 and the 6 golden coins. And I get F1 Racing with the multiplayer adapter. I didn't know anyone with Game Boy Pocket. I didn't know anyone with F1 Racing. Didn't care. Multiplayer adapter, super cool. Never know if you're going to have a chance to play with friends. Need to have that.
But you got to have one just in case.
Yeah. And I remember my dad asking me, like, do you want to spend all your money on one thing? And I was like, yes. I want it. And I played that thing religiously until the point that, you know, eventually Game Boy Color came out. I asked for one for my birthday. It was the purple one, the see-through purple one. I remember my mom being like, "Are you sure you want a purple one?" I want the see-through purple because it was see-through. How cool is that?
Super cool. Yeah.
And so ended up getting that and the Super Mario Bros. For the Game Boy Color that had came out. And that was kind of my birthday gift. And then eventually got into N64. So I was an N64 kid. Eventually sold my N64 in a garage sale. So I had elevated from running my own lemonade stand to actually running kind of my own table of
video
my
game.
Stuff. Yeah. And bought a PS1. I was really big into Crash Bandicoot. You know, my dad didn't play a ton of video games, but the few that he did play with me over the years, Crash was one of them. He really enjoyed Crash Bandicoot.
It was like the Orange Fox, right?
Yeah. And he would jump. He would collect the Wampa fruits and would jump on the boxes and spin and everything. So really enjoyed Crash, specifically Crash Team Racing, because it was one of the games that he and my sister would play with me. So it was kind of the Sony Mario Kart equivalent, and really enjoyed those. And then it went to another level when the GameCube came out. And I get a GameCube. It was another garage sale situation. You know, double my money. This would have been 2001, so 11 at this point. And I remember I'd saved my money, waited for the GameCube to come out. My cousin Freddie and I are at KB Toys Pokemon League. And I know after the league, I'm going to get to buy my GameCube. And I go buy a jet black GameCube with Sonic Adventure 2 Battle and Super Smash Brothers Melee. One of the greatest days of my life. Just go home, play them. So great. It was everything I wanted it to be. And like to this day, the GameCube is my favorite console. I think the GameCube it has absolutely.
That's why you want to collect that one.
Yeah. And so I have so many nostalgic memories around it. But video games hold a special place in my heart because a lot of, you know, especially childhood memories, I've got a lot of really intimate memories that attach to it. You know, you'd brought up Tamba. I remember, you know, my dad and I went to a car show, and it was one of these like car shows where they also had like vendor booths and things. And, you know, a lot of times you never see anything there of like the stuff I was interested in, but there was a video game booth. And I'll never forget that my dad told me you can get a game that's $15 or less. And I had found this Tamba game, but it was 25. And I was like, can't get that one. And, you know, because I had like looked at it and I was like, I don't see a price on it. He's like, it's 25 on the back. So I put it back. And I went and found this NHL game, NHL like 98, I think it was, or something. and that fell in the range. And when I went to turn around to be like, okay, is this one okay? Because I think it was like $10 or something. He was checking out the Tamba game at the booth and got me Tamba. And so I don't think Tamba is the greatest game of all time. I don't think Tamba it should even rank in like top 100. To me, it's number one. Like that memory there. Like my dad was like pretty strict to his ethics on things like, if we set a limit, we set a limit. And that day he broke it because that day to him was special. We were spending a day together. And he,
Father Sunday.
He got me that game, and I loved that game. As a kid, I never beat it. They actually just remastered it and released it this year, and I did beat it. Nice. And then I ended up getting Tamba 2, and so yeah, that game just holds a super special place in my heart. It's one of my fondest memories of just like my dad and I, having a day out doing something that, that's why it ended up it will always be in my top 5 for sure. So
it's funny how those memories of whether a friend, a loved one, a holiday, of some random thing, a game, a console, an action figure, it sticks with us for so long.
Yeah.
And it changes everything. It changes everything. I never had a game console growing up either, because you can't have those when you have, tuning dials and rabbit ears. So it doesn't work.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah.
And I got about 10 plus years on you. But I would always go to my friend's house, and that was the thing that we did. Like for me, that was one of the treats on a weekend or like a long, weekend. I'd go stay at my friend's house, and it'd be like multi-day. We'd stay multi-day.
Oh yeah.
And I'd sleep over, and we would play games from night until morning, and until we couldn't do it anymore. Just we couldn't do it.
Yeah.
And those
You're
are the
so
moments.
tired. You're like, we need to stop, but you don't want to, because eventually the weekend's gonna end. And
yep, that's it. And even though in the early days, because I go back to original Nintendo.
Yeah.
And as you know, there was no save. And we'd be doing this on school nights some days. So I would go to my friend's house. My mom worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3. And so I'd have to stay somewhere else, overnight. And so I'd stay there during the weekdays going to school. And I'd just ride with him to school. And we would play Mario all night long. And his dad would come in the room mad because he could hear us in there giggling and laughing, see the light of the TV. And of course, he comes stomping in the room. We turn the TV off real quick, lay down, pretend we're sleeping, leave the Nintendo on, of course. Sure. And then jump back up as soon as he left.
Yeah.
So those moments, like not just 2 days ago, I was playing with my older son Ethan when we're playing Nintendo here behind me, and yeah, it's just those epic moments of life.
Yeah,
it changes everything.
And what to us now, like as adults, such a small moment, to them is everything. It's we think back to what were the like my dad. I bet you my dad wouldn't even remember that. Like buying that game or any of that interaction, because to him it was just like a thing he did in the moment.
Right.
To me, it was everything. And I like to bring this to Pokemon a little bit. I think about this when I think about like cards like Moonbryon that skyrocket. And everyone's like, well, who would pay that? Why would this? Think about how many kids out there that sit and watch this on YouTube, and their parents go out and get it for them, and that's that moment for them. Right. That's like the thing that for them, it's going to be one of the defining moments of their childhood. It's going to be one of the most important things to them. And I think really thinking about, bringing it back to the history degree, thinking about kind of why people do what they do, how these interactions form, how people, it's really easy when, like, for me to sit and think, why would I go spend $1,000 on a graded Tamba today? Because it's one of my deepest emotional memories. For everyone else, that looks stupid, right? But like for me, it makes complete sense. I'm every time I look at that emotion, that memory is reinvigorated for me. If there's people out there that are creating that for their kid by buying them $1,000 PSA 10 Moonbryon, that I understand that. Like I do, and are we all still a little crazy? Yeah, absolutely. But I get it. But I totally understand it. And so yeah, that's but yeah, video games. That's my thing. So, and then obviously continue to play video games my whole life. And I think they will always be a large part of my life. I hope my wife is an avid video game player. I hope my son will like them too.
Okay.
So, yep.
Okay. Well, we'll dive into that here in just a little bit. I want to hear more. I want to hear more. I will answer this one real quick. So, this is a homemade brandy from my grandmother. Made about 10 years ago. And so tonight was a night to celebrate. So I poured a wee little one. And so that was from Grandma's Brandy.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's super awesome.
Yeah.
It is nice to celebrate. I brought water. So I'm
I did too.
yeah. So, but no, that's super awesome.
Good stuff, man. Good stuff. Yeah. All right. So I do want to hear more, because there's not, and this is what I mean in the beginning by your well-versed verticals of knowledge that you bring to this hobby. There's not too many that dive as deep on the playability side, especially running tournaments themselves in terms of playing and travel for it, not to mention vending and turning that into a business there later. I want to hear a little bit about your TCG journey. Did you actually have an anticipation to make that your lifelong career at some point? And you kind of alluded to it before. Did you think that was going to be the thing?
That I would be in TCGs, or that I would play TCGs?
Play. Yeah.
Play. I mean, anytime you play, you always hope, like, man, I'm going to be good enough that I'm Jason Klasinski and I could make a living off this. But especially back when I was playing, the infrastructure still really wasn't there to make enough money to live off of it, even if you were a Jason Klasinski, because the prize support just wasn't there. You know, it wasn't even until my first or second year in that they switched to cash prizes from scholarships. And so a lot of the, you know, you really had to consistently be the best. I also just realized very quickly the team that I was on was extremely competitive, multiple players that would top worlds, things like that. That I was good, but I would say I was above average. I don't think I was ever great. I think maybe I could have been if I would have reined it in and just played the best meta deck. I never found that fun. I always was the one that wanted to try to like solve the anti-meta. Right. What's everyone playing? How do I play the opposite?
I figured that would be you. Yeah.
You'll see that through a lot, like as I tell you about this, a lot of the decks I picked, things like that. So when I played, I would say when I first really kind of got on the map, joined the Hovercats, things like that. I think the first big run I ever went on was with a deck called Lantern Prime. It was with Lantern Prime and Electric. It was before a deck. It was right after a deck called ZPST came out, where you tried to rush out Shaman and Zekrom, and Zekrom, and then you tried to use Shaman to like move the energy to him and stuff off Pachirisu. And it was before Zekrom Eels came, the better version of it. I had went up to Michigan. There were Dan and Dave Richards, shout out to you guys, awesome guys, that had built this Thunderous Lantern deck with Electric. It was the format had just changed. Everyone was still playing Typhlosion Reshiram. And I see this deck, and they're just mowing people down. And I'm like, man, the next weekend, I'm about to go to Southern Indiana, where nobody has seen this. Because back then, information didn't travel like wildfire. The only real like article information was 6 prizes. And so you could scout areas and go somewhere else and completely shock these people. And that's what I did. I built Lantern Eels. I took the Thunderouses out. I was like, this card's not good. And I went south. I went to Southern Indiana, where I lived. And I just started cleaning up the cities. I think I won 4 cities in a row, got second at the 5th, and kind of became the Lantern guy, to the point that everyone started playing Lantern and I started anti-metaing Lantern. So they would all, Lantern was, you needed DCE because it counted as like 20 damage instead of 10. So I ran Lost Remover to get rid of the DCs that I knew I would play when people inevitably played the mirror, things like that, trying to always stay one step ahead. And at that point, I actually got my run was so hot and it was so early in the season that I actually was tied for number 1 in North America with Sam Chen and ranked 3rd in the world. Back then, they didn't do championship points back then. It was ELO. And so I just won so many matches. And my only loss in those 5 cities was in the finals to Keaton Gill. That I ended up going on and being a Hearthstone player and everything. But that my ELO was it was through the roof at the time. And then states came and I still tried to play anti-meta and got absolutely crushed. And,
reality check
became really good. But it was that was kind of where I started. And because I had that experience, that I always chased that dragon after it of when can I be the innovator. And really I wasn't even the innovator. I was the copier, right? I was the innovator to everyone in my area. But Dan and Dave Richard were the innovator. And so after that, I kind of chased that through and through. I remember 2012 cities when Mewtwo was really big. Next Destinies had come out. I was running this Mew Roserade box type deck. There was a Roserade that could flip and Mew could copy its attack, and you could knock out a Mewtwo with 1 energy. Really wasn't that great because then they could just attach a DC and knock you out right back. But I got third into cities with it, right? We're rolling. We're back in action, baby. Never did anything with it after that. And then it wasn't really until I would say I think it was 2013 Nationals or 2012 Nationals, I ran Entei. So Quad Entei was a main deck at the time. It wasn't really anti-meta, but it was very unique. You only ran 4 Entei EX, no other Pokemon. Except the night before the regional, people were talking about teching in Mewtwo and 1 Shaman to counter the Mewtwo Celebi decks. I had 1 borrowed. I was ready to tech it in. I ended up not doing it. I was like, I'm not going to change the deck the night before.
Right.
Should have changed the deck the night before. I went 6-3. I bubbled out a cut. The deck that went 9-0 was Rahul Reddy, I believe. 9-0. It was Quad Entei, but with a Mewtwo. 2 of my 3 losses were to a stacked Mewtwo that I couldn't deal with. It clearly was the right play, but it was just one of my favorite decks that I ever played. And then the next year I went to Nationals, and that was a Blastoise Kyurem format. And I loved Ho-Oh. I loved everything about Ho-Oh. Yep. And I was like, man, Ho-Oh there has to be a deck here. And the biggest problem was Kyurem, who was water, was weak to metal. You had Cobalion EX and Little Cobalion in the format that could handle it very well. There just weren't a lot of support cards that could help it get going, except Ho-Oh. Blastoise was weak to grass, but unfortunately it just and then there was Black Kyurem, I think, that was weak to like electric or something, or dragon, I think. So there wasn't really a good counter for it. And then the Blastoise that set up Black Kyurem was weak to grass. So there also just really weren't great counters for that in the format. And these are both very big decks. And I played this thing religiously on PTCGO, the old version. I think it might have still been a browser client at the time. It was that old. And I had played hundreds of decks, and I could just I got to the point I could beat everything except Blastoise. And so I just took it in. I said, you know what? I'm just gonna try to avoid Blastoise for the weekend. And luckily I got potted in a pod that had all the Blastoise were in the other pod. They all got weeded out, and I ended up going 7-2 and making cut, which was day 2. I ended up playing a Mewtwo deck that it was Mewtwo Garbodor, crushed through that. I had every, the deck was built to have an answer for everything except Blastoise. Love it. And then I get paired against Jose Marrero in top 64, and game 1 he was playing Kyurem, but it was with Lugia. So it was the first time I had played like that. So other Kyurems I had mowed through the event. That Kyurem, though, was different. And he also played the Life Dew tech that most other people were not playing. Eventually, the top cutters with Kyurem were playing it. So it was a little new to me, but game 1, I mowed him. Because the great part about the deck, nobody knew what I was doing. Like, I think I ran like 13 different Pokemon, none of which were like viable in the meta at the time. So I'm just dropping random stuff out of nowhere. Like, my top 128 opponent, she never saw my Mew in game 1. So game 2, she just stacks a Mewtwo. And then I just literally drop a Mew, attach, energy switch another one up, knock it out. Done. And I think her exact response, I'll never forget it, was, do you just run everything in that deck? And then kind of like spit your cards up. Like, that's it. I'm not going to win now. I have no energy on the board. And so Jose game 1, I cook him. Game 2, though, I opened Lone Shaman EX, which I had teched in for Blastoise, a matchup that I already deemed I'm going to lose. Should have just accepted the loss. Shaman EX did not have high HP. It got donked. And so I end up losing game 2. Game 3, we have a super close one. I've got him on the ropes. I have a Landorus fully stacked up with no damage on it. At this point, I'm rolling.
You think you got it?
Deoxys or Thundurus, because I've got answers to both. And he manages the most unbelievable sequence of events. It was like Juniper into like double Chorus Machine, attach DCE, bicycle for 2, double Deoxys, bicycle for 2 more, into another Deoxys, power, 180 to Landorus, 180 to 0. I almost turned it back. I Skyla for an Enhanced Hammer to get rid of his last Plasma, and I would have him. My Enhanced Hammer was one of my last 2 prizes, and so he got
no,
that ended the run. In my next 3 matches, we actually broke it down because there were a ton of people rallying around this deck because there was nothing like this in the meta at the time. Like, Ho-Oh was the rogue deck, and we mapped it out. I would have had like 3 Darkrai in a row to top 4, and my deck had 3 Landorus, GX, and Terrakion. I mean, I would have just cleaned through those. With max potions, they couldn't one-shot me. They had nothing. I played 1 Darkrai in Swiss, and I 606'd it. And so like this would have just been super clean running, but that's how it goes. That's Pokemon. And you know, Jose and I have laughed about it since. He's a great guy. We became friends after that. And he is an unbelievable player. So that was kind of that. And then after that, you know, people wanted deck reports and people knew me because of that. And so that's kind of where Hoa won the sweet spot of kind of my deck of all time. That's why when I did that last tournament, I took it for one last spin. And
is it just kind of final scenario?
Yeah, like I'm gonna go out. I'm just being competitive. I'm gonna go out with the deck that I love more than anything. So.
And during this time, obviously you weren't vending. Did the vending at regional events happen right after this? Was that the transition takes you into the business side?
So
how does that come?
After that nationals?
Right. Just kind of in general, like as you left TCG playing, did you move directly into vending at
Correct.
tournament?
I did. So yeah, I played up right like my first regional, or that Crazy Punch regional, the one that I did the last hurrah with Ho-Oh. I went to the next regional. It was just one that I was going to vend at. And so that was kind of, I had already like done a preliminary like vend at one states. It was a smaller thing. And then after that, I was kind of like, I want to do this more. And so I ended up starting and vending from there. But yeah, transitioned right into it. That was kind of it was all part of the same bucket of like, I'm not going to collect. I also need to stop playing because then I'll want to buy cards to play with and try to manage them between. And I just, I need to focus on this and make it a priority and do it the right way. Kind of going back to talking about me learning from my mistakes. Mm-hmm. You can imagine the conversation when I call my dad and tell him I'm going to quit my job and I'm going to start selling stuff full time. The same thing that got me in trouble in college. And I could already he didn't say anything. I could just hear it on the phone. And I remember just saying to him, I just need I don't need a speech. I just need you to be supportive of me in this. And he said, okay. And that's what he did. And he was supportive of me in it. And so, because I already knew what the speech was going to be, right? He was going to recap my whole life history. And at this point I had my mind made up. I was going to do it. And part of it was I was going to do it. And I was going to prove that I've grown as a person and that I can do this the right way. And that I have the talent and skill to do it, but that also that I can, grow this into something real and be mature about it and really change the trajectory of my life into what I want it to be. And so that was kind of the transition moment was from there. So.
As a quick aside, how does he look on it now?
He gets it, I think. It's weird. Like he thinks I'm extremely successful. He's extremely happy for me, very proud of me. It's hard for somebody that's not in this space at all to really understand that like this is a viable, sustainable thing that you can do long term, especially with part of me and my business model is I always, long term want to transition more towards long term investing in it and things like that, and less of the day-to-day grind, right? That's more of the means to the end. And over time, I should kind of progress away from that. And I'm sure we'll talk about that more later. So that's, hearing that, oh, you're going to invest in Pokemon cards. That's just,
here we go.
That's Looney Tunes to most people in the world. It's just, none of this seems real. You talk numbers, you talk things. None of that seems real, especially to people that are working 9-to-5 jobs that have never had experience with any of this stuff. And, you see sports cards on the news sometimes and things like that. That seems like a foreign world to most people or something that's, only mega rich people do that kind of stuff. And so super supportive of me. I think now for the most part, he gets it. We've had a lot of business talks. He is so supportive of me that when COVID came around, he had called me and kind of told me like, hey, if you ever need any capital to make an investment that's a little bigger than your britches, you give me a call. We've never had to really exercise on that at this point, but it's one of those like
that was nice.
Him telling me you've regained that trust, and that meant a lot to me. So that was really cool.
Yeah. All right, so you got dad's backing. Now after you jump in though, is this exactly the moment you say I'm leaving the publishing career? So I'm done playing CCG. I quit my publishing job. I'm jumping into selling Pokemon full time. I'm now back to the beginning where we started. I'm gonna build this website real quick. I gotta get my distribution going. All this is happening within probably 1 or 2 months, right?
Yeah, so I was working at the publishing company, and I had met near the end of 2014. I had met who is now my wife, Brittany, and we were living about 3 hours apart. And we very quickly fell head over heels for each other. We had both had serious relationships previously that had ended, which really kind of helped us figure out what we wanted in a person. I think we both very quickly realized we were kind of compatible for each other. And it got to the point where my roommates that I was living with in college were like, or post college. So I lived with a coworker from that publishing company. It was one of those things where, we're really no deep's too deep, right? Is that where we're at? Yeah.
No, we're here.
We were friends, great, good friends, good coworkers. She kind of revealed that she had feelings for me. After I had moved in, it ended up making things awkward. So I ended up moving out, and I just had to find a place quick. So I moved in with 2 kids that were still in college. One of those kids was from Saudi Arabia, really nice guy. And he wanted to do pranks like he would see on American television. We would do pranks and stuff like that until one day he poured rotten cheese down my door. And I was like, all right, that's not a prank, dude. That's all set. And then it was just like, after that, it was kind of like things it was, these guys are still in college. I'm not in college anymore, and needed to find somewhere else. I also to line everything up for you, that's going on. I'm at the publishing company. This is now, I've worked there for a while. And at this point, the account load that I had was pretty high, and it came down to getting raises, and I got a 10-cent raise. I was all set on that job after that. I like no raise, like just tell me you can't give raises at the time. 10 cents.
Don't give me 10 cents.
Back in the face. Yeah, all set on that. Yeah. And so that's happening at the same time that my roommate situation is just not the greatest.
Pouring cheese down your door.
Yes. In my now girlfriend is telling me like, man, this whole driving 3 hours thing sucks. And I'm like, yeah, it'd be cool if we just like live near each other. And she's like, you should just move in with me. And we've dated for like 3 months at this point. And I'm like,
you're like, okay,
what do I got to lose? Like, 10-cent raise and bad roommates, like worst case, we split up. And I, at this point, right, I'm already learning how to like leverage. Like at this point, downside risk, we split up, and I have to find another place to live in another crappy job.
Which is what I got to do right now anyways.
Yeah. So we map it out, and I had already kind of had these ideas about starting, I had been getting serious about budgeting, and I learned about, Mint and putting all my stuff in my budget and figuring out where I was spending my money. This is when I learned that I was spending more on pizza than I was on rent. So I was really trying to crack down on that, and which is a common theme in my life. But so I was really trying to rein in on that stuff. And that was kind of when the wheels started turning on, like, what if I took this thing full time? And so all this stuff kind of just came together at one point where it's like, all right, I'm going to quit this job. I'm going to register this thing officially. I'm going to register it in her town. I'm going to move in with her. I'm going to pay out my lease here because I still had 5 months on my lease. And she's going to let me, because I just told her, like, I can't pay this out and pay you rent. She's like, that's fine. Just live here with me. And, we'll start rent after those 5 months. So I pay out the lease, move in with her, go from there.
Wow.
And just go for it. Start that, I move in, and the first day after I moved in was when I called the distributor and said, I submitted the application. They wanted to set up a call. They used to do phone calls and talk to you and I would make sure you're a real person, all that. She's like, hey, this all sounds great. Sounds like you're ready to go. You got the business account, you got, your bank account and everything. Just shoot me a link to your website and everything. We have to have a website. And I was like, oh yeah, that's in development. Let me get it to you. So that night I throw something together, get it to her next day. She signs me up. And then I place a massive order for Roaring Skies, was my first set. And I pre-sold the set to cover the order. And what a lucky first set, by the way. Because even, we all know what was that?
First run of Roaring Skies.
First run of Roaring Skies.
Yeah, okay.
So the initial release. So Shaman's known to be a popular card, although at the time Shaman was not super expensive because nobody knew that it was going to be that good. We should have because of Uxie and other cards, but we didn't realize it was going to be that good. So Mega Rayquaza was actually the big card at the time. And that set released, and I remember I pre-sold, covered all the boxes, everything was good, get it in. And I'm telling people I'm gonna ship it same day release, right? Same day I get it in. And because back then you got it on release day. It lands to me at 3:30. My post closes at 4:30. I already have the box made. We're scrambling, but I sold singles. So you can only imagine. I live in what we called the crap shack at the time, 900 square foot house that's shared with another roommate. And we have no furniture because we tore it out to put shelves up. So the living room's bare. We had a bed and a desk, and we stacked everything else against the walls. So we've just got product all over the floor, just tore apart. Because I'm digging for the singles I pre-sold, and I cannot pull a last Mega Rayquaza to save my life. To the point that I messaged the guy and I said, "Look, I have to get to the post today. I'm going to refund you this one. I'm still going to mail your order out, and I will mail you the one that I owe you tomorrow." Because like that's like how strict I wanted to be to my ethics. If I told you it was going to ship today, it's going to ship today. So he got a free Mega Rayquaza out of it. He didn't even care. He's like, you don't have to. I was like, no. Like, I'm going to start this off right. I'm going to, I learned a lot about how to do this from that. Right. But boy, what a lucky set. Like, what if my first set would have been like Fates Collide or Steam Seed? Like, it would have been totally, where people will cancel their pre-orders 2 days before, Roaring Skies, though, what a hot set. And then eventually, the Shamans, you didn't sell at first because nobody wanted to pre-order them, and then Shaman skyrockets, and it all went from there. So
wow. What I mean, this story is amazing. You would think you were just making it up. I quit.
You would. You really would, because it doesn't sound real. But there's
I didn't have any money. My girlfriend just let me stay for like 5 months for free. We tore out all the furniture, put up shelves, filled it up with Pokemon product, ordered Roaring Skies, and open cards to our heart's desire.
Well, and the tangent also of I moved in with this girl after 3 months of dating, and here we are 10 years later married with a kid.
Right.
So
right.
I'm not saying I would recommend everyone to do it, but also when people tell me they're moving fast in a relationship, I don't judge. Who am I to judge?
I get it. I get it. Right.
So yeah.
And that's a good way to test to see if the relationship's going to work, right?
Oh yeah, we were going to know very quickly. I mean, I moved a full-fledged business. She's in med school, so she's studying all the time, and I'm moving a full-fledged business into her house to the point like through the
and not paying rent
to put shelves up. So yeah, we knew very quickly either this was going to work or this was like, are we compatible people or not? And she fully embraced all of the chaos that I brought into her life, and what a wonderful human being she is.
Really? So, yeah. Kudos to Britt.
Yeah.
We got one here from Cashmere Fire. Do you ever feel overexposed by investing in Pokemon and running a business, making a living on it?
Not now. There have definitely been points through my journey where I have, especially, talking about the crap shack, getting going, thinking back now on leveraging, okay, I'm going to pre-order this much product with a distributor, put it all on a credit card, and then go pre-sell it out. Right. So like if they cancel their pre-orders, I still have a way to pay for it, but now I'm drowning in credit card debt. Right. And a lot of it was that I had a lot of faith in the community, right? The community really rallied around me when I got started. And I had faith that these people that I made friends with were not going to go back on me. And luckily, I gambled on essentially the humanity element of the Pokemon community, and it paid off. They did back me. They championed me. And for the most part, early on, they really took care of me. And so early on, there were definitely times where I put every dollar I had went into this thing. I paid like, eventually did pay rent, and paid the rent that I had to, as my wife and I got, at the time we were engaged, got more serious. I covered a lot of the bills because she was in med school. And, but other than that, if it wasn't bare necessities to survive, it went into the business, right? Like, and her and I both had this vision of it that we knew, early on, like 2015, when we really started to get serious after living together, we had kind of set out like, where do we want to be in 8 years when she graduates medical school and residency? And we mapped that out, and everything we did was to work towards that. And part of that was like, let's not do gifts for each other. We know how much we love each other. We don't have to do birthday gifts and Christmas gifts and stuff to celebrate that. We can just celebrate each other. And so for the longest time, we didn't do any of that kind of stuff. We just let's put it towards our future, right? Like all of this stuff is great. And I applaud anyone that does that kind of stuff. And today we do little gifts and stuff, but for the most part, it was, you know, it's going to be the greatest gift, being able to buy a house when you start residency, or, you know, being able to, you know, set up a college fund for our future kid that we didn't have at the time, things like that. And so we were just always very like forward focused, and we both had big ambitions. And so a lot of that came down to tossing everything we had into it. And there were definitely stressful points where, you know, you sit and question, is what I'm doing logical? How much risk I'm taking on, is this logical? You know, and a lot of it was weighing out, how far do I have to fall versus how far do I have to go up? And, you know, everything was a calculated risk. It wasn't just blindly tossing money at the wind. But I would be remiss to not say that there are definitely aspects that I got super lucky in my journey. Absolutely. And so, yeah, I would say that there definitely are. I think now I've insulated myself quite well, and I'm actually probably more risk averse than most people, because for the longest time, you know, Charlie said something on a podcast a long time ago, which was, if every move you make in this hobby you're winning on, you're probably not taking enough risk. Like, you're costing yourself more in your opportunity loss than what you would take on some of those losses when you do hit. And for the longest time, I operated in that exact way. I cannot take a loss on anything, because for the longest time I couldn't. And I probably didn't transition out of that mindset early enough. You know, I probably operated under that mindset for probably a year or two too long. Whereas now I've kind of adjusted, and I do risk calculate. And there's times I take losses, there's times I hit big, but I think it's one of those things where, yes, I have. And for anyone asking that question, I think a lot of it comes down to kind of looking at where you're at. You know, where are you at? What kind of losses can you afford to take on these things? What, you know, how much do you really know about what you're doing, right? A lot of the risk that people take on in this can be mitigated with just more knowledge. They just don't realize it. And so, like, always trying to accumulate more knowledge. That was the one advantage I had, right? I didn't have more money than people. I didn't have more opportunity necessarily. I was given some great opportunities from people, but I could get more knowledge. I could always try to learn more and be, you know, any transaction I did, be the person that had more to work with, right? Oh, you're going to sell me your collection, and I can recognize that dark Persian doesn't have HP, and that there's money there, and I could still be ethical. I could tell the person, hey, this card's worth more because it has no HP. They're going to sell it to you anyways, because you just told them that they can get more money. They're going to still cut you a deal on it because you did the right thing by them, right? And so for me, it was always about, what advantage can I get? And that was the one. So yes, to bring it back to the question, yes, where do I ever feel overexposed? Not now, but yes, at one time I have
definitely was there. The good news is smart goals here. Let's go, right? Woo. The green shiz is in the house, so we're allowed to restart. Good to see you, Josh.
Great. Yes. Welcome back to when I was 6, actually. No.
So tell us, how did you know? Let's though dig a little bit deeper on this one, because as you run through this business, this is 2015, if I recall correctly, and you've ran this probably still to today. So maybe even just jump ahead. Tell us, where is Squeaks Game World today? And then we'll go ahead and go backwards just a little bit.
So Squeaks Game World today now is pretty much where it's been for the last 10 years, growing healthy, you know, consistently trying to always upward trajectory. It's went through a lot of changes over the years, especially the direction of what I wanted it to be. You know, I always knew kind of what my end game goal was. It was the kind of like the Rudy model, right? When I first started making YouTube content, the first time was when Rudy really got started going. You know, back when the only creators were SM Pratt and Dirium. And then Rudy started making Magic content, that I really wanted it to kind of be this end game goal, set it and forget it. You know, any of the day-to-day grind stuff I do is elective by choice because I enjoy it, not because it's the necessity of I need to make this money to facilitate the other things. And so it's been a learning process of how to get there. You know, back then, a lot of the infrastructure was not built out like it is today. Graded cards were not what they are today. There wasn't nearly as many institutional opportunities as there are today. And so a lot of those were trying to create my own, you know, writing article content, even predates Squeaks Game World. I started a website in 2012 called TCG Insider with some friends that Nobody ever wrote an article but me, but I tried it. It didn't last very long. But because I always enjoyed talking about the finance side of this game, eventually I started writing content for 60 cards. And, you know, that was more competitive based content. And I did some market content over products. Eventually I got into YouTube in 2016. Most people probably don't know that I did YouTube once before that. And then after that I did Twitch, you know, and with some friends, we started Team Winning and we actually ran the largest Pokemon online tournament before Pokemon had ever done it. We ran a 1024, so 1,024 people. We had sponsors from like Troll and Toad, Top Cut Central. We gave thousands of dollars in prizes away. If this group collectively would have had the work ethic to stay together, and I think we all know that's why it fell apart, is if we would have made it to COVID, I think we would have been huge. And I think we saw the opportunity of this in the online space, you know, before, like this was well before Pokemon ever did player cups or anything like that. Went and built a Wix website. Discord wasn't around yet, so we went and built a Wix website, built a forum in it, and built tables as the forum things where players could go pair up and would rebuild those tables. And then, okay, sorry, Discord existed, but its chat wasn't the same as it was then, and we would put them in Discord to actually play the matches. And we ran it; it would run across multiple days. We would have judges. We did everything, and you know, all of this was kind of part of, you know, winning. It was like an extension of you know, what I was doing with Squeaks Game World. I saw this as like, you know, I also sponsored the event, things like that, you know, wanted to sponsor a team, do these types of things. You see a lot of stores do this that start with competitive players where they eventually want to do a team, right? I know Danny partnered with CGC, Danny Phantom, to do a competitive team. And one of the things you learn very quickly, and luckily Danny with this partnership, I think makes it work, is that there is not a lot of money to be made in this, nor is it very profitable to make a competitive esports team in Pokemon. It's just not there. And eventually I made a website called Squeaks GWE, which was going to be the entertainment umbrella sector of Squeaks Game World with articles and things like that. You know, to kind of rival Poke Beach. I had a translator. We found where to acquire the information in Japan and try to compete with them on speed, things like that. John at Poke Beach is a great dude, was highly more efficient at it. And it was much more of a workload. And I was not willing to sacrifice the store to chase that. So that did not last long. So a lot of it was like a lot of bumps in the road of trying to figure out, how do I take this store to the next level? Because at the time, the infrastructure wasn't there. And then, you know, I streamed on Twitch, and then eventually I turned that back into YouTube around when COVID started, and COVID really changed everything. The store was always successful. It was, you know, and it grew. You know, in 2016, I did bulk a lot on Amazon. That was kind of the first place I really built enough capital to really get this thing going. But it got to the point, man, bulk will tear you apart. Like, we used to sit and make those lots for 16 hours a day during Christmas on the floor, the wood floor of the crap shack, and just carry garbage bags full of packages to the post, where it was so much at our little post office, they would let us drive around back to just drop them. They wouldn't even scan them. They would just send them to the hub facility because they didn't have the capacity. And it was like, we made it through that Christmas, made a killing. And Britt and I both told each other, never again. We're never doing that again. Like, if we ever do bulk again, we're hiring someone to do it. And so after bulk crashed in that 2017 crash, that was it. Never re-entered it. So, but for the store, like to grow it to kind of where we are today, it was a lot of learning, a lot of trying new things, not being, you know, I think the biggest thing for me was probably a lot of those things failed more because I was too scared to take the full on risk of them, hire an employee, or, you know, invest the capital needed to take it that distance to really give it that shot. As opposed to like trying to just, you know, bootstrap everything from the ground up. And, you know, you only have so many hours in the day to do that. And I was still effectively doing that with the store. And then COVID just kind of changed everything. And you hear this story a lot from anyone in COVID that already had a position in inventory or whatever. It changed their life. And it did the same for me. It has accelerated my growth rate. I still believe I would have always gotten to where I am today. I think it probably would have taken 5 to 10 years longer. But now, you know, and so now I'm just starting to try to slowly position myself more towards what that end game goal always was, which is to move more towards the set it and forget it things, or move more towards just the things that don't take as much manual labor time, you know, the condition grading, sorting, packing, shipping, you know, dollar cards, things like that. Early on, though, you've got to do that kind of stuff. That stuff, you know, you make 50 cents on a card, you sell 1,000, that's $500. That's a lot of money. And that can, that can buy you your first big slab that you can double up on or something like that, and so now I'm slowly trying to move away from a lot of those more labor intensive things. It's just hard because that's my security blanket. It's what I've always known, and it's what I'm comfortable with. And so now we're slowly trying to get to that point. So
do you still run distribution in the same magnitude that you did before? So you're still getting just as much of new products that come out, you're storing it, you're just not really selling it at that level.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely do still sell some of it. I think I'm just more selective now about what I order. Back then, you kind of ordered everything. The way distribution works is, especially as we went through 2016 and then 2020 with allocations and stuff like that, you really got to the point where you need to boost your numbers as much as possible. And you just have to, the amount of battle academies I still have that I will never sell because they're not even worth shipping is that's just kind of how it was. Whereas like today, where we're at right now, I'm much more selective. I'll sit out sets. If they allocate me on something, that's okay. I don't have to eat it anymore. If they don't give me as much, I'll find it somewhere else. I kind of understand the increase from distributor prices to secondary market prices is not that great, to where it's worth eating it when you buy a booster box from a distributor and it's double on the secondary market. It's not worth it when I'm buying it and I'm watching somebody on Facebook sell it for the same price I just paid for it at the distributor. I'll sit it out. And, I learned that lesson from 2017, which was kind of the first crash of Pokemon, when bulk collapsed, singles prices by proxy collapsed, and we watched kind of the whole market fall in on itself. And it stayed down for about 3 years. And we watched a lot of people that kept ordering and kept just taking it on the chin for these things. And for a while I did too, because I thought, I got to keep my numbers up. I got to, they'll cut me off. They don't. They want customers. As long as you keep your account active, you do order some things. So now I'm just a little more picky and choosy about what I order. I try to always fulfill. I've got a long-term customer list. I always try to fulfill what they want and need. But there's definitely sets I've sat out of, because I also just believe the best way to signal to Pokemon or any other producers, signal with your wallet. Like if they're taking it a direction like overprinting or what I feel is overprinting, the best way I can signal to them that is by pulling my order back and saying, I don't think I can make money on this product. I'm not going to order it. And if enough people do that, then they realize, ooh, something's out of whack here.
This isn't working.
And then they correct, right? And we've seen this before, back when Crimson Invasion came out and stores were canceling pre-orders left and right. It's the only time I've ever called the distributor and asked if I could cancel a pre-order. And this was months in advance. And I got a bad feeling of it. I was like, this is not going to go over. We had just had Guardians Rising and Burning Shadows, 2 super hot sets. One had Tapu Lele, one had the Charizard Chase, and this one had Buzzwole. That was not carrying in. Buzzwole was playable, but it was not the chase of a set. And so I called my distributor. I said, look, I've always paid on time. I've never even done net 30 with you guys. I've always paid cash. If you can do me a solid this one time, like I'll pay for it, I'll buy it. I know I committed to it, but if you can do me a solid this one time, and they did, they cut my full order down to like 2 cases, I think. And when that set came out, I opened one box to see how bad it was. It was really bad. And I think those 11 sat on my shelf until 2020.
Wow.
The 11 remaining. And so it was that bad. And what did every store do? They canceled. Distributors went and told Pokemon, everyone's canceling. And what do we see happen? Ultra Prism was short printed. Like they printed way less of that. And stores didn't buy in because they were still nervous that the correction wasn't going to happen that fast, which is why Ultra Prism skyrocketed to the absolute moon very, very quickly. And to this day is still one of the most coveted sets of that era. And so, yeah, that's kind of the deal. So.
I love it because it's behind the scenes. You can really see what's happening, back when some of these XY sets were really at their prime, and how it drove the business, how it changed your perspective, but it really set you on a different trajectory.
Yeah.
Why no brick and mortar?
Oh boy. How much time do we have? No, I have had, I don't know if Mason's still in the chat.
He was.
Yeah. Love Mason, Cardinal Gaming. You guys should check him out if you're ever in Kentucky. A good friend of mine. He's heard this a million times. I've had a store like brick and mortar plan mapped out for years on what I think would be an optimal way to do a store. and I'm surely wrong, and I would probably absolutely get torched. But I actually think a live, like a service industry model of a store could be just as viable, if not more viable. Like some kind of a hybrid between retail and like pay for space type thing, rent private rooms, build like a ship station type store into it where people can come and drop off packages that you will like help them pack up and ship. There's like pack mail in my state where like people can go like, you need help packaging your stuff, we'll help you and ship it and all that. And like, you know, you already have all the supplies, you already have all those things, you know, out of the back, you know, order the t-shirt machines, order the stuff, like print the, you know, to build like a whole service aspect of the business into this. Right. And then you can still do jerseys for teams that want to, you know, have competitive teams and merchandise and play mats and all those things. And we've seen this to some degree. There are stores that do certain things like this. Pastimes up in Chicago, they, you know, when I had play mats printed, they were the ones that printed them, if I remember correctly. And so, you know, there are stores, you know, ARG out of Ohio is a good example where they used to make metal cards and play mats and all kinds of stuff that, you know, the things that can really help supplement when this industry that can be very volatile goes through some of those volatile states can really create more consistent income. And I'm spilling all this now because I don't think I'm ever going to do it at this point. I think I'm just kind of at a point in my life where when I want to retire versus where I'm at now, it's just not as realistic. If I ever did it, I think it'd be more of a vanity thing than it would be actually like, because I think this is what's best for me. But I've always had this like vision of how I would build out a brick and mortar. I think emulating a lot of the things that Japan does, especially in conservation of space, are things that stores should really look at. The vertical case space, like utilizing verticality in stores. We're starting to see a lot of stores push more towards that. So I'd always had this model built out. It just never aligned right. You know, for the first 8 years, first 5 years, my wife was in med school. We knew eventually she'd go to residency. The way that works is you get matched in a match system. You don't really get to pick where you go. You get to rank places and those places rank you and a computer matches you. And one day you get an envelope and it tells you where you're going. It's like the Hunger Games of med school. It's crazy.
I didn't realize.
Look it up sometime. Yeah, it's the most stressful induced thing you've ever seen. It is. You also might not match. And then you get entered in a thing called the scramble, which is that day you find out you don't match, and it literally sounds like the Hunger Games. And that day, you start getting calls from med schools that didn't match people or residencies, and they will interview you. And you either get a spot there or you don't. And if you make it to the end of the scramble and you didn't get a spot, you are out of luck. Go get an internship, and maybe next year you'll get to go to residency. So you may graduate med school and be an MD and not even get to go to residency. Crazy.
This sounds terrible.
It's like I never heard about this until I met her. I can't believe it works this way. Like criminal to me that it works this way. It's crazy. So go through that. So it was one of those like, we don't know where we're going to land. And eventually we land, but we also don't know that we're going to stay there. Residency is only 3 years, right? Because then it's about how good are your contract offers. So then we didn't want to do one there. And then we got to the point where we moved here. And once we moved here, it was kind of like, let's find stability. Eventually, you know, we got pregnant to have a kid. I'm sure we'll get into that. And so it was one of those where it's just never really lined up. And I'm kind of to the point now where I like the trajectory of where things are going. So it probably just will be one of those things that doesn't happen. And I think I'm okay with that.
Okay. All right. So you called off the brick and mortar store, but this has obviously given you a wealth of knowledge and experience up to this point, regardless. What would you say this business venture, because it's really the only one you've ever executed on, other than your lemonade stand, but outside of that,
which might have been my most successful business, to be honest.
What has it really taught you?
Oh man,
outside of just Pokemon, I mean, business, life, like what's the takeaways you have from this?
A lot. You know, a lot about myself, who I want to be as a person. I think part of like, you know, tying back to like my immaturity for the longest time and stuff is because I didn't really have a direction. I didn't know who I wanted to be in life, what I wanted to be, where I wanted to go, what was important to me. And I think this has taught me a lot about that. It's taught me a lot about community and friendship. You know, I know this is all going to sound super cheesy, but like what people mean to you. Like I wouldn't be where I am today if those people that I would have met through playing would not have rallied around me and championed me as hard as they did. You know, an example that some people in here may know is Tricky Jim, Andrew Mahone.
Oh yeah.
We knew each other from playing. We were in the same area. He was in the Midwest. And he, you know, he was one of the people that really championed me. I'll never forget him coming up to my first booth I ever did and giving me the biggest hug and just telling me how proud he was of me and things like that.
That's awesome.
You know, and this is just how tight knit Pokemon was back then. Everybody knew everybody, and it, you know, there was no jealousy. There was no whatever. It was everyone just wanted to watch, you know, can he succeed? We hope he does. And they rallied behind me. And it really just taught me the power of like doing right by people. There's definitely things that over the years, I wish I would have done differently for certain people in that regard things. But for the most part, it's, you know, conduct yourself with ethics. There's always going to be the people that pass you, the people that, they will get farther than you faster, whether it be because they have more resources, because of how they conduct themselves, whatever. It's not a competition. This is not a competition, and that you will find that you will get infinitely farther networking and being collaborative with others than you will being adversarial and combative with others. Like it's unbelievable, the night and day. And the few success stories that people have where they are the opposite are the outliers, truly. And if you look at the true pillars of this hobby, your TCAs, your Charlies, your Gem Mints, there is a common denominator to all of these people. And that is the common denominator, that they have conducted themselves with ethics. They have done things the right way. They've done it above board. They've tried to bring others along on their journey and not, you know, I've got to get to the top at the expense of knocking other people down the rungs of the ladder. And I think recognizing that that's the person I want to be. And I know this probably all sounds like major moral grandstanding, and I don't want it to be that, but like that really has become an important part of my life, to where even outside of this hobby, I really do try to conduct myself with that way, that I treat other people the same way I would want to be treated, and that nothing is transactional, that I don't have to do a nice thing for somebody and expect a nice thing in return, and that you can just do solids by other people and have it just be that. And some of my best relationships with people in this hobby, John, Pokemon Radar, Nate, Sub F, some of the people that I would argue we have made each other some of the most money and created some of the greatest opportunities for ourselves, were never transactional. They were never on the back of, if I do this, they're going to do this thing for me. And I think that's why those relationships have been so fruitful, is because we know at the end of the day, we have each other's back, right? I have a list of, if, you know, not to be morbid, but if something ever happened to me, you know, I don't want my wife to have to sit and sift through all this and figure out what to do. Call these people, they'll solve it. And I know they would, and I know they would do right by her. Right. And I would do the same for them. And making those kinds of relationships, right? There's going to be some day where we put the cardboard down, and what do we have left from all of this? And I want my story to be more than just, I made a bunch of money on cardboard. I want my story to be more than that. And I want, when other people think back to their interactions with me, that it was that I left a positive impact and that I improved their lives and their journey beyond just, he taught me how to make more money on cardboard. And that's kind of, you know, I've learned over the years more to try to conduct myself in that way. Like I said, I'm not perfect. I've definitely made mistakes over the years. I definitely, there are things I wish I could have done different. And that's part of growing as a person. Every day I try to wake up and, you know, do better than I did before. So
exactly. Yeah. And I think you and I share the same overarching concept, is, you know, we want to leave it better than we found it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This industry's given me everything. From the people that introduced me to my wife were people I met through Pokemon. They were hover cats, right? They were like, my career today, my livelihood, my, you know, my friendships, it has given me everything. And I think that's the coolest part of this is, you know, briefly before we came on, we just kind of chatted, you know, caught each other up on histories. And we kind of talked about how much, like, we don't, when you're outside of it, you don't realize what this industry is until you get into it. And then you really see the scope and the gravity of it. And people don't realize how much this can change their lives. And I'm not just talking financially. I'm just talking in like your actual internal fulfillment of look at all of us. It's, you know, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. And we got a bunch of people sitting here hanging out, chatting, like, because we bring positivity to each other's lives. We care about each other. We're friends. You know, I just went to Collecticon for the first time ever this past weekend in Chicago. Met a ton of people that I've interacted with for years. John, first time we ever met was at Collecticon this weekend. And all of those interactions, some of the coolest people I've ever met. Almost everyone's the same as they are online. And it was like, this is how it's supposed to be, you know? And like that to me, one of the hallmarks of my almost 10-year, more than 10-year journey, if you count the playing days, was that, you know, putting the faces to the names, you know, having the interactions, going to the
all
dinner,
that together,
you know, walking around the con. And yeah, it's unbelievable what this industry can do. And so I guess what I would tell people is, you know, I lived in a crap shack that it was a good day if you woke up with no cockroaches on the floor, things like that. My cat caught a snake in the kitchen, you know, stuff like that. You know, I've roughed it. And, you know, regardless of where I am today or where somebody else ends up in 10 years, however far they get, as long as you're progressing forward, man, this industry has it all. And it really can give you an unbelievable amount of life satisfaction. And it's so worth being in. And part of that is doing it the right way and doing it right by people. Because the other great part about this industry is the people that don't do it the right way and don't do right by people don't tend to last very long. They will definitely have their moment in the sun. They will shoot to the moon, and then they will go out in a blaze of glory. And this is just a time true test. It's occurred tons of times over the years, but the good people stick around, and the good people tend to thrive. And it really is a beautiful thing. I love it. I'm so unbelievably passionate about trading cards in the hobby, and like probably to an obsessive degree. I love to learn more. I love everything about them, not just Pokemon, but just all games. And it's a huge part of my life. So
yeah, I think on a recent video I posted of that one last question from when we had the Collecticon party here in Charlotte. It's hard to articulate how different this hobby is than anything else, and the people that are here. And as you said, the people in the chat, the ones, you know, that we see at Collecticons, but it's unlike any other, and so grateful to be a part of it. It's just yeah. So tell me, I want to hear, since we're here on the Collecticon, how was it? Give me the scoop for you. Yeah, gotta hear it.
It was awesome. So I didn't know what to expect. So I've vended Pokemon regionals, things like that before. I've been to Gen Con. This is a little different because this is a convention that's completely centered around buy, sell, trade. Like everyone's around hawking their stuff. That's kind of the whole thing. Collecting, enjoying the collecting of the hobby, you know, which is very different. You know, Pokemon events, you go to them, and if you're not an official vendor, like buy, sell, trade's a no-go, right? Like you don't do that.
You're out.
And, you know, Gen Con, I don't think they really have as many rules to it, but it's just not really the environment to do it, you know? And so this was just very different. It was also very different because here are tons of people that I interact with every day that I'm going to meet for the first time. And I've always tried to tell people, when you meet me in person, it's going to feel just like the same person you talk to in Discord every day, the same person you see on YouTube. And I really do want to be that authentic self, but you never know if what you're going to, and I'm confident that like that is who I am, but you never know if what you get on the other side is going to be the same, or if like the way you interact online is going to translate in real life. And so it's such an unbelievable joy when it just does. So like the first night, you know, my wife and I get there, we get some food, we meet up with Mason. He gets us our badges and everything, comes and introduces us to Greenie and a few others, and we get pictures, and he kind of shows us around the con. And that was super cool. You know, everyone's just setting up, so there's not a lot going on. And then we actually had to jet because we were catching the blue line to go right down into Chicago to actually see Harry Potter and the Cursed Child on Broadway with Grifty and Rock Pokemon and a few of their friends. So the first time we're meeting them is like in the theater, like, because we had got in, they come in and meet us in the theater and sit in the row, and we're taking pictures, and it's just like it is on Discord, just like it is when we're sitting hanging out, just, you know, shooting the breeze at night, everything like that. And it's awesome. It's just so awesome, which is why the worst part of it was that you have to be quiet during it. Like you can't sit and chat with each other because you want to just like sit and chat. So, you know, we're watching, and my wife's there, and my wife is so like she knows these people, she's talked in Discord some, but she's so unbelievable with just like naturally integrating herself in. Like I knew when we left that the narrative is going to be Oh, okay. Squeaks is like he is online, but Brit's really cool. Like Brit's gonna steal the show every time. Brit like will win everyone's hearts. I've never met anyone that doesn't like her, and that's exactly what it was. Right, Thrifty and Brit hit it off. They're hanging out, super awesome. Rock and I are super close, so everything was just good. So then that night we all ended up going to the group Airbnb where we kind of met the bigger group for the first time. Again, a lot of these people we know, some I didn't know. Meet John for the first time. We have probably an awkwardly long hug for everyone else in the room. But, for us, it's like we become best friends. Like if you ask John or either, we're best friends. And we've talked about the hardest times in our life, the good times of our life, tried to help each other through life. So to meet for the first time, like, yeah, there's a lot of emotions that go into that hug, and it was so wholesome. Yeah, they took pictures of it. People in the room were like taking pictures of like this very like wholesome hug. And and it was like that for everyone. I'm a hugger. And I generally default to like, I'm gonna give you a hug unless you actively like shy me to not.
Push you away.
It's the first time I met you. I've never even talked to you in Discord. I'm hugging you. That's just how I am. Because I want, one, I'm a firm believer that people should hug more. I think it's a good way to show, affection towards other human beings. But I'm also just a believer that I want everyone to feel included. I don't want anyone to feel like, oh, he really likes John and here's a handshake, like, no, like we're all homies here, right? And like that, if someone's kind of sitting there being quiet, I'm gonna pull you into the conversation. I'm gonna be that guy, like I'm gonna make sure everyone's integrated, everyone's having a good time, even though all these people know each other and I don't. Like that's how I am. And so I, going in there and seeing everyone just be as absolutely cool as I thought they would be, and just have a great time. So we went that night to the Airbnb. Felt that hug across the room. Yeah. So a lot of these people that were in chat were there. And it was super cool. And then that night we ended up, we trekked back to the hotel, got some sleep, went to the con the next day, just kind of went around the booths, got introduced to more people that we met. The hug was awesome. Having no pants to be okay. Walrus's joke is always that I need to walk around and hug people with no pants the second time. So maybe in the future, you never know. But yeah, it was super awesome. Going around the con was interesting. So beyond just how cool the people were meeting the people, the con itself, I didn't know what to expect. I've had people tell me for years I should vend them kind of since they've started. I don't know that I would after going. I don't know that it's really just not only where my store is at, because for me, everything I, that I want to sell is for the most part listed. So I would have to delist it. I have to prep it. It's also just, there's a lot of the same in the room. I mean, I was kind of telling people there, the thing that surprised me the most is the gravity of what I saw. Pick any alternate art, there were 5,000 copies in that room, except maybe like Moonbryon. I mean, just an unfathomable amount. And so when you're thinking about selling, how many people? Okay, let's take Dragonite. That was the one when I put him on the spot in the hotel room, and I think it was Old School that picked Dragonite. So Old School picks Dragonite. I said there's probably 5,000 of those in the room. So if we're thinking about it, how many people show up to collect the con thinking, I want to buy an alt art Dragonite? 50? So you've got what, a 1% chance of selling your card in that room? That I almost feel like you really have to curate an inventory to be successful at one of these things. Almost like curate a subsection of stuff to draw people in to then capture the 1% of people that want to buy the Dragonite. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a lot of slabs that aren't moving because the people that wanted them have already got them and maybe they just didn't see your booth yet, right? Because we all know people are going to spend their money on the first thing they see, the first one, even if there was a better price in the room. And so for me, it's just, I think the booth prices, from my understanding, are really great. I think that there is a massive amount of opportunity there. It's just, for me and where I'm at, I don't get to go out a lot, just with like how busy life is and everything, that when I go to those events, if it's like the toss up of standing behind a booth all day and trying to like min max and spend days before trying to prep everything and get it ready to do it just right, versus just hanging out with the homies, I just want it to be a vacation. So I think I'm going to go to more next year. I don't think I would probably vend any of them. Not because I don't think it's a good vending opportunity. I just think for me to vend it the way I would want to, it's a lot more commitment than what I would want to give. But I saw tons of homies that did really well with it. And I think it's cool. I like what Collecticon's doing. I would love to, video games have had this for years. The conventions all over the place with tons of floor vendors. I love to see that we are seeing it spread more into the trading card collectible space. I would love that hopefully they get big enough where the variety of people that come allows excuse me, for like a larger variety of inventory, right? I think a lot of people right now feel I've got to play it safe. I've got to bring my Pokemon, I've got to bring my Magic, you know, maybe a little bit of Yu-Gi-Oh, and that's about it. And HomieCon 2025, yeah, I use the word homie but I would love to see more variety. You know, Rock's booth to me was fun. I like to walk around and just look at some of the cool stuff, which I know is like annoying to the vendors because it's like, well, I'd really like you to buy the cool stuff.
Right.
But you know, I think if you get enough of that in the room, like Rock had all kinds of Weiss and random things I'd never heard of, and you know, there were just tons of games that I didn't even see represented there. Like if I would have found one booth that had Fire Emblem Cypher, that would have been so cool to me. Like just I would have probably bought something just because they had it there. And so yeah, I would love to see that expand more, but I think part of that's just collecticons growing more and getting a wider array of people and becoming less of like a Pokemon con and more of a just a collectible con.
Collectible. Yeah.
And we're starting to see that. There was some video game stuff there. And, you know, Mason's booth had a ton of variety with Gundams and plush and all kinds of stuff. But you could definitely tell a lot of the bigger booths were just playing it safe, and it was primarily Pokemon for everything.
Yeah. Yeah, Mason pulled me in the other year as well. My kids saw the plushes that, hey, I gotta have this Rayquaza, Dad. Like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and and there's definitely a market for it. So that was awesome. Saturday night we went to the casino after dinner. That was great. First time I've ever walked out of casino up money. So yeah,
your money,
my money. I was up. I did not spend a ton. I walked out $54, which was kind of like 54 bucks until I woke up the next morning. And I was like, I didn't lose money. Heck yeah, that's great. Awesome. So that was great. Went with a bunch of friends. It was a really good time.
What'd you play?
That had never went. You know, we play slot machines, so it's like you know, yeah, it's but it was a good time. And then kind of Sunday we just kind of went around, said our goodbyes to people, and then hit the road back to get home. So it was awesome though.
I love it. Wonderful story. I saw the pictures kind of spread across the Instagrams and the nets. I was like, this is awesome. Nothing but smiles, and I think Dan was shedding a tear at some point. I was like,
the joke that he was shedding a tear when John and I embraced because he's like wiping his eye. Yeah. So
good stuff. Glad you had a good time. Sorry I missed it. I know Walrus and I were talking a lot, trying to get me down there. It wasn't.
Yes, no, I am very excited to get to meet you in person at a
Can't wait.
That'd be awesome. So.
The next one. I told them 2025 is gonna be the year. HomieCon year. Yeah.
HomieCon year.
Yeah, I love it. You know, if we bring it back, Squeaks, there was a statement you made some time ago, and it was something along the lines of too much time that doesn't move the goalpost forward. And you're speaking in terms of business, trying to really advance yourself. And you've spoken about how you've really started to, I would say, settle into a place in the business at this moment where you're heading towards that long-term set it and forget it trajectory. Are you, or do you feel that you're not really advancing the goalpost forward as aggressively as you did? Is it now just setting back and slowly doing the same? Or is there any large advancements that you're trying to really make in the business?
I actually think it's probably the opposite. I think now I'm moving the goalposts more forward than what I ever have. And I think part of that is really just honing in on where I want to be, what I want to do, and just doing it really well. Whereas I think for me, part of the fun of this industry is learning more. It is trying new things. And if if you look at some of the stories I've told, TCG Insider, 60 cards, team winning in, YouTube once, YouTube twice, Twitch, like the list goes on and on. Squeaks GWE, like the amount of things I've tried, it's great, and it's made me well-rounded, knowledgeable. But it's always like jumping one thing to the next and never like completely, I wouldn't say seeing it through. It was more just like I'd get to the point and realize this is not going to turn into what I want it to turn into, when I always had what I needed to get to where I want to be. And that was the business, Squeaks Game World. Like I had the thing I was good at. And, so what it really was is I need to hone in on doing that to move the goalposts forward and managing my time better on these auxiliary things like content that I really enjoy, And maybe I don't have to be the content creator. Maybe I don't have to be the one that's making it and editing it and, dealing with the trolls in the chat that I don't have the thick skin to deal with. Why can't I just be the guy that goes on somebody else's podcast and is the guest every once in a while or something like that, and do it in my spare time instead of trying it to be the main thing, which always just ended up detracting from the thing that I probably had the most talent for. And so I think just kind of being, again, being honest with myself. I'm really big on, in my more current years as I've gotten older, trying to be really honest with myself about where my flaws lie and how do I improve upon those. How do I be a better communicator? How do I be more empathetic? How do I listen to people better? Because I like to talk, right? I'm sure if we timed out how much I've talked versus you in this podcast, it's not even close to a balanced ratio. And
we're not here to talk about me.
Sure. But it's one of those things where I always want to improve. And I think for me, part of that was being honest about like, where do I want to get in life and what's going to get me there? And am I doing a lot of these things because I believe they're going to get me there? Or am I doing them because I enjoy them? And is that the responsible thing to be doing? And can I find that same fulfillment in another way? Right. This is great. I show up 20 minutes before, we have a little catch up. We talk. We'll probably talk 5 minutes after. I don't have to do any editing after. I don't have to deal with the comments after. I may go leave some, but I don't, and I get the same enjoyment out of it. Right. And I get to help a friend, like fill a spot that you needed to fill for the podcast. And so like, I think there's ways that for me, it's been about how can I creatively find ways to get this same creative fulfillment that I've wanted out of those aspects of this hobby, while still moving that goalpost forward. So I actually think today, modern day, I'm doing that better than I ever have.
Okay. So if I was to re-articulate that a bit to make sure I understood, it's really the redirection of time and attention towards where you think is going to give you the most. And in doing so, you've really advanced the goalpost of the longevity of where you wanted to be because you have that focus.
Yeah. And it can be as macro as like these big topics, or as micro as in what I'm doing today is optimal as what it could be to save me time. Is how I'm listing cards on eBay the most efficient way to doing it. Right. And because oh, wow, you're going to save 10 seconds doing that. Well, that's not worth your time. Yeah. Until you do it 60,000 times. And now that's 600,000 seconds you've saved, however many hours that is. That's a lot of time saved, and so I've had a lot of experiences over the last year that have made me really put into perspective the value of time and where I'm spending it, and trying to be a lot more cognizant of how I'm spending that time. And so creating those efficiencies and doing those things has become really, really important to me, to pushing towards that goal. So, because my goal is to retire at 50, by the way. That's
I was going to say, yeah, you said 50, 55 was around the time. So,
yeah.
Okay.
And it's more about that I have the freedom to do it. If I don't want to do it, I won't do it. If I love what I'm doing at the time, I won't. But I want that opportunity. So because also if I turn 50 and I decide, there's a lot of things in life I would love to do that will not feed my family, right? I would love to work at like a humane society for a while, just for fun, take care of the animals, help out where I can. I would love to, the Boys and Girls Club where you can like sponsor a child and kind of like, help them, grow and like spend time with them and things like that. I'd love to do that at some point, something I've wanted to do for years, but I want to do it when I can dedicate the time to doing it right, and making sure that like, it can be
not the pressure.
It's not just like a thing that's kind of like on my plate. And so I want to carve out that time that I can have some of those things that I chase in my life, and that's kind of the goal I'm working towards. And then when I get to that point, if we'll see where things land, and if I keep wanting to go that direction, I will, or if I keep wanting to do what I'm doing, I'll do that. So
okay, we look forward to it, Squeaks. I can't wait to see what you do next, man.
Me too.
I'm excited for you.
I too am curious what that will look like. So.
Because it was really fun as I did our research to prepare for the podcast, because you were, as you said earlier, you were in so many different things, and I kept running into dead ends, or you removed all your videos, or
sure. Oh, you should have told me. I could have given you links, but yeah.
I was like, okay, that was a dead end.
Yeah.
You talked about it here, but then it's gone. I said, okay, let me go back. Let me go back. But yeah, you had tried so many things, but it also, to your other point, he gave you such a wide diversity of experience and what you don't want to do, what you didn't like, what you did enjoy. And I guess really back to the same point that we just kind of isolated on is it gave you the focus that you needed to do what's going to give you the best outcomes.
Yeah, definitely.
I love it, man. In a small transition, I would like to talk about some current events. I'm pretty sure you stay up to date on things. So
I hope. Yeah, I mean, I'll have you brief me if I'm out of the loop.
I don't think you'll need that. We'll run through a couple, and I'll give you 3 at a time, and you tell me which one you want to talk about, because we could go down rabbit holes on any of these.
Oh,
so the first 3 will be tag grading, CT scanning, or Hawaii Worlds event.
Oh man, those are all. Whew. I don't know a bunch about the tag company, so I don't know if that'd be the most interesting one. CT scanning. Let's do that one. That'd be fun.
Okay. So obviously this has been covered quite a lot. And at this moment, the price point seems to be leaning on one side, and it doesn't appear to be impacting what will be the modern and the everyday buyer, seller, consumer. But that's just because we're at the beginning, right? We're at the beginning. Yeah. And we know very little. And obviously this has been around for quite some time. What are your thoughts on the impact on the hobby as we progress through its maturity? CT scanning maturity.
I think it could have a catastrophic impact on the hobby. And I don't mean that as an exaggeration. I kind of bucket this the same way I bucket scaling packs. Way back in the day, scaling packs was something that a few mischievous individuals did, that you see them at Target and they're weighing out packs, and then Pokemon had to put code cards in to balance that out so you couldn't weigh them anymore. And a lot of other, smaller publishers of TCGs and stuff just don't counter it because it's expensive to do an extra production thing. Now look at it today. You can't buy a vintage pack without it being weighed safely because you have to assume it's weighed. Right. Yep. That took 10 years to play out, essentially, to go through that gravity. And I think about it, really, it probably took close to 30, because when I was a kid, for example, my one Easter, I think it was 18 base 2 packs or something that were on discount in my Easter basket. I ripped every single one of those, and I remember I didn't get one hollow. Wow. I know now statistically the odds of that are incredibly thin. Could it have just been coincidence? Maybe. Could people have been weighing packs all the way back in the early days? 100%. It would have been super easy to do.
Right.
And back then, that's just not the kind of thing people thought about. And so it's possible that it really took a good chunk of Pokemon's lifespan for pack weighing to play itself out to where it is today, where for the longest time, if you weighed packs, you were scummy. Today, it's if you weigh packs, you're only scummy if you're doing it in an attempt to deceive. I'm going to weigh out and sell the dead ones, as opposed to I'm going to weigh them, separate heavy and loose, and sell these, or heavy and light, and sell the lights and the heavies, and be very transparent about it. Right. And it comes down to transparency, but it has taken a long time for us to get to that point. And I still don't like weighing packs, but I understand the necessity of it. So let's take that now to where
transpose
we're at with CT scanning. Yeah. CT scanning. It's expensive. You're not going to do it on modern booster boxes. You do it on a $48,000 Team Rocket Returns box if it costs you $75. Well, the scanner, you got to be able to read the scans, whatever. We're talking about industrial CT scanners. If there's other avenues for industrial CT scanners to make filthy amounts of money, they will figure out how to optimize those things beyond the medical field. They will and I know that there's other versions. You can buy used ones at $100,000. You can buy little $1,500 ones that aren't as good and can't do boxes but can do packs. I put time into this. It's going to get to the point that these publishers are going to have to start looking at protective measures internally, because it's going to get to the point that if the financial incentive is great enough and there is a way to be dubious with it, people will be dubious with it. History has proven this time and time again. And the pack scaling thing, we have seen in the industry prove it. We already have precedent. So I think right now we're in an era where a lot of people are shouting from the rooftops, the hobby is dead, it's over, blah, blah, blah. And it's clickbait. And that's why I'm so hesitant to ever come out and say how catastrophic I think this can be. because it makes it sound like I'm just trying to garner a headline, right? Oh, we're going to shut this YouTube live off and we're going to go change the title to CT scanning is going to ruin the hobby with Squeaks Game World. I don't think it will, as long as we as a community act fast, right? Make this of importance, that we want there to be measures in place where this is something that, you know, that there's got to be ways to protect against this. We already know that they struggle to get things that don't have foil in them, right? That's why so many Magic cards struggle to get CT scanned, because they don't have foil. They can pick up the little hot stamped like rarity thing on the bottom,
hologram thing. Yeah.
But you know, it's one of those things where I think modern is far less susceptible to it, but everything that's modern is eventually not modern. And part of what makes this hobby work so well is the fact that a lot of these things do mature over time. This comes back to Pokemon's customer acquisition model. Charlie talked to you about it in his interview with you, about how good Pokemon is at getting customers, and how, you know, 5 years from now, the amount of people in the hobby, 70% of them were not here when we are talking about this right now. And that's what makes things rise in value over time. And with that rise in value comes the opportunity then where people are going to try to squeeze out margin. And, you know, if somebody's selling a box at 90%, there's no margin there, unless I can go buy 10 of those, sift out the one that is worth opening, resell the others at that same price back into the market, and then make my bag on the one that's going to have the Rayquaza Gold Star in it, you know, things like that. And what it comes down to is like, is that going to impact a large scale amount of consumers? No, but it deteriorates trust in the industry. It makes it harder on vendors, makes it harder on the supply chain, makes it harder on the publishers. It steals that opportunity. We talked earlier about the memories that people make, you know, the Tomba from my childhood, the, you know, kids opening packs. It steals that opportunity away. Think about anyone listening. Think about opening up like one moment where you opened something crazy. I'm sure everyone can have that moment to think about it. This type of thing can take those away from people. And like, when I talk about like how important this industry is to me, I know this sounds crazy, but like this stuff matters to me. And I know it's going to exist. It's always going to be something, right? It's people in sports will sit and bend the packs to try to find the RPAs, stuff like that. People away packs. It will always be something. And I just hope the industry can collectively act fast enough that it can get ahead of it. Cause maybe it just fades into existence, but we all thought pack weighing was going to fade into existence too. Now, today, I'm more of the belief that pack weighing has actually always been around and just flew under the radar long enough that people got away with it for a long time. And maybe that's tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, but you know, people didn't just figure out about scales in 2014, you know, like, and so it just, that kind of thing, I don't know. I think there's just like a level of integrity that goes into this industry. And I think this industry is so great. And so anything like that, I'm generally going to defer away from and hope that, you know, action is taken to prevent it.
And perhaps this is what you mean by the action. Do you anticipate, much like we speak to this perspective of individuals, that the bad actor will be pushed out, even now as a company, by the community?
I think that's where it has to start. You know, I think the community has to hold those individuals accountable that do that type of thing. In regard, like, because we say right now, I said, you know, for what we know now, you said right now we haven't seen a big impact. We don't know.
We don't know.
Every high-end vintage box could be getting CT scanned right now as we know it, and we have no clue. And the smart people are not going to tell you. Only dumb criminals get caught, right? The smartest criminals do not get caught, and that's why people don't know they're criminals. And to me, this is fraud. Like, if you sell something that you are selling the chance or the hope to someone that that opportunity exists, when you have already validated that opportunity does not exist, that is fraud. That is just the baseline definition. And I'm never going to support that. So I think, the first step is as a community, making it recognized that collectively we are against this thing. And then what happens is when that thing becomes pervasive beyond what the community can stop themselves, the onus then gets put higher up the chain to solve that, whether it be distributors Pokemon, or the people with the CT scanners or the publishers or whoever. to solve those problems.
Okay. Love the point of view. Yeah, but I fully agree. It's unfortunate, but I really wonder, much like the same point you made on the scales, how long this has really been going on, and we just
that's the other thing.
Yeah.
We don't know, right?
We don't know.
It could have been going on for a while, you know, and nobody knew it until the wrong person just got too loud about it, right?
Right.
And then we knew, the same way that, like, you know, for the longest time, people didn't even talk about like what sets were, you know, weighable. Or I can give you a better example. Sun and Moon base. Okay. Sun and Moon base is mappable. You don't even have to have a scale, and you can map out the hits out of Sun and Moon base boxes. And this was one of the things that was figured out very early on by some mass breakers that were stores, and tried to keep it under wraps because they didn't want it to pervade through the industry and have people do it. And it was really bad, because what happens then is, if you're sitting on that, nobody wants to buy loose packs. Nobody wants to buy, you know, the only thing that sells are sealed boxes at that point. And that can crater a whole segment of the industry. That's bad for Pokemon. That's bad for the distributors, bad for the players, bad for the stores, bad for everybody. People think it's good for them. I can assure you, the damage that comes from any one of those types of things is worse for you than what any one-time gain you're ever going to get off of maximizing off of it.
Yep.
Just single-handed. And so, you know, for them, it was, we got to keep this under wraps because we know what happens if it gets out. Eventually it got out. Like the word spread around, people figured out. I'm sure that there's still videos up on YouTube exactly how to do it. Which is why just now, you know, luckily not today, those boxes are expensive and nobody's probably ripping a Sun and Moon box because the value's not there. But someday it might be, right? Someday Espeon Hyper Rare might be worth trying to rip a box for. And if you're not buying out of a live break or something like that, and you're just buying those packs loose because, oh yeah, well, we sold 3 to Collecticon last time, so we got these. How do you know, right? And like that's not good for the industry. You don't want people to have to question, is the integrity of the product I'm buying actually there? You just don't. So
yeah, not having the trust baked into the product and into the overall experience is not a good thing. Not a good thing. Let's move to the next 3.
Okay.
All right. We'll look either, and you can pick, counts as one, the Team Rocket set or Trainer Pokemon coming up here in upcoming sets.
Okay, the new Team Rocket set they're going to do.
Okay. Pokemon Pocket or the recent data leak.
Ooh, boy. I want to pick Pokemon Pocket, but I still haven't gotten approved on mobile, so I haven't gotten to dive into it. So that one's probably frustrating. What was the Team Rocket set? Let's do that one.
Okay. All right.
I want to do the Team Rocket set. Yeah.
So obviously the hype, as many things are before we see them, is through the roof. Everybody is expecting, you know, what it was before, really anticipating what Pokemon they missed and they could be adding to the set, and now it can be completed now for the first time. Obviously now with the newer artworks and the latest illustrations and designs, it just could be through the roof. But also, this is just my opinion, Pokemon knows exactly what they're doing, and if they knock it that far out of the park, they keep us on a leash. They say, here's a little bit, and then they pull us back. They give, here's a little bit, and they pull us back. Again, my opinion. I think they'll still be good. I'm still going to be excited. I'm still going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But I think there's going to be a lot of people disappointed as to what it actually ends up being. What are your thoughts?
I think this set lives and dies on if they do dark and light Pokemon in a meaningful way. I think that's been a hallmark of both Team Rocket sets so far. I think it would baffle me if they just wouldn't do them in any capacity. I think they're definitely going to be in there, but I think it has to be meaningful. I actually think.
What does meaningful mean? What does meaningful mean in this case?
I think the designs have to reflect light and dark Pokemon. Like, I don't think you can, like, for example, Light Jolteon's iconic because it's Jolteon like hugging a Togepi around a tree sleeping, right? It's not just like a Jolteon that they named Light Jolteon. When I saw Dark Sylveon, for instance, with Celebrations, I'm already not a huge Sylveon fan, but that card didn't do it for me because it's just a Sylveon looking mad. It does not emulate anything to me about what dark and light refer to, which are really dark is kind of like the Team Rocket Pokemon, and light, which that one didn't have anything to do with. And why would I think anything else? For the most part, dark Pokemon, I believe, have always just been related to Team Rocket Pokemon and in the sets with Team Rocket. And Light's kind of the counterpart to that, right? Light Dugong, Light Machamp, Light Jolteon. And so also just, doing Lance's Charizard in celebrations and not doing the counterbalance. Like, why not just make a new Light Charizard, right? Like, do the counterbalance to it. Like, it was almost like we didn't know what to theme this Sylveon as, and we had Lance's Charizard, but we didn't have anything for Sylveon, so let's just make it dark. So, I would like to see a meaningful inclusion of these Pokemon that really make people feel some kind of an emotional connection back to Team Rocket, which is where this all originated.
You want the nostalgic, okay.
And I think this era was really built for this set. If we think about it, this is the throwback era to EXs. They've done a lot of homages to the old EX era throughout this. Latios, and Latias in the last set. Things like that. I think this is the time that they could really just blow people away with beautiful art that reflects the almost darker aesthetic that Team Rocket brings, that Team Rocket Returns, I think, really captured, maybe even better than OG Team Rocket did. And I know that Pokemon tends to lean more away from the dark nature and themes, but that is kind of how they can get away with it, right? Team Rocket. And I think if you're going to do a Team Rocket set, you have to recognize what Team Rocket is to your brand, and that there is a consumer base that likes it, and that it kind of allows you to maybe elevate what you do with that a little further than what you normally would. And maybe give us those Pokemon in some vantage points and perspectives that we don't normally see them. If it's just traditional Pokemon in art and they look like they normally do, and they just have dark or light in front of it, then I would tend to more agree with you. And I think a lot of that's going to go on there. And I think it's also one of those things, throw 3 gold stars in there. Do it. We're in the EX era. That is the most defining feature of the EX era. And I don't think they'll probably do it because they really seem pretty strongly that they're going to move forward with the rainbow or the different colored borders, which are super sweet. Freaking love those.
Looks beautiful.
Yeah, beautiful. But why not do rainbow borders with gold stars? I mean, hey, well, let's double down. I think that they absolutely could. I think if you want to guarantee it's home run, I do think it probably leans more to what you were saying. They probably know exactly how well this set's going to do just based on the name, that they don't necessarily have to pull out the stops for it. Will this be set 8 or 9? Do you know?
I don't know.
Does anyone in chat know? Because what I would say is, if it's 9, I do think you have hopes of a gold starry type thing, because that's kind of your last section of the block starting your year 3, 9, 10, 11, 12. If it's 8, you're probably closer to you're still in kind of the second block finishing up of the second year of the block finishing up. It's probably less likely that they introduce something new like that at that point in time, especially when they did just introduce the rainbow borders. So
yeah. I mean, it's a whole new tier of rarity, that is. Winnock says 8.5, so he's speaking on the Japanese side, but 8.5.
So if over there it's 9, it's probably going to be the R9 here. So it is possible they could do something like that to kind of close this era out with a bang. The thing about gold stars is now, for them, it's kind of like Pokemon Snap 2, right? You don't really ever have to do that unless you need it, because it can be a financial lifeline. Like, if you're in a really bad era that's doing really financially poorly, that's going to be a thing that will pull people back in. And so you kind of don't want to use your almost trump cards
bullets.
You have to. Yeah. So I don't expect to see it, because I think that set's going to sell itself on name alone. But I'm really excited about it.
I'm hoping. I'm enjoying it either way.
EX Team Rocket Returns one of my favorite sets of all time. So,
and I think if you also just tie in loosely, at least, if you've watched the Horizons animation, they've done a pretty good job of keeping that dark nature around what would be Team Rocket. So the Celery Rouge, and I forget the trainer's name that is managing that Pokemon. Then you got that whole evil layer behind it, and the guy that's managing Dust Noir, and this evil kind of overlord that's talking to them at the layer. So they have a pretty good potential to bring that into the cards. Let's see.
And especially now with where we're at with art rares and things like that, Put Jesse and James in the background of a card. Don't make it a Jesse James full art. Put them in the background. Grab Butch and Cassidy from the anime. Some of the OGs that people remember. Put them in the back. Like, do those homages. Like, not every 151 homage has to be 151, and here are the only 151 Pokemon. Like, there's other ways to do throwbacks. If you want to do a light Pikachu, make it Sparky from the anime. The one that the guy that beat Ash in the Elite Four, spoilers for everyone out there, 27-year-old spoilers, that like it had like the different tail and he had the spiky hair and it was Sparky. Do that. Like, there's tons of ways that we can do throwbacks. Have a card with, it doesn't always have to be Giovanni. There are more Team Rocket members than just those. and I think it would be really cool to see them kind of lean into a little more of that as we go. I think it's interesting, the Giovanni card, I think that was in 151 with the Persian. That to me would have been an unbelievable new Team Rocket set card. Whereas in that set, it was just kind of overshadowed by everything else. And I think it was that set. It might have been a different set, but like I would love to see more stuff like that. I would love to see them lean more into the new rarity schemes, the new way they're doing art to highlight dark and light Pokemon in a way that we haven't really seen before.
I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Me too, dude.
Yeah, fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed. So I think that could really bring Scarlet and Violet back as an era. I think this is an era that it was never going to be as great as Sword and Shield, because Sword and Shield had a cultural movement around it that is very hard to replicate. I think people look at things based on, how much value they're worth and how much money they make instead of maybe the components of them. I think they've started to really get Scarlet and Violet on a track that people are happy with. And I think this is one of those things that could cause it to be quite memorable. We went through a similar thing in Sword and Shield, Vivid Voltage, battle styles. They kind of went through overprinting, struggles. People were down on the era, and then Evolving Skies saved it. I think Team Rocket the new Team Rocket set, they returned squared the second time. I think that could like be one of those cornerstone sets that really kind of changes the narrative for Scarlet and Violet's block as a whole.
Yeah, and it's really grown on a lot of us when Scarlet and Violet first came out. And I was like, but as we saw the better illustrations, we saw the better art rares, and now the new rarity tiers and the rainbows, and it's like, okay, this is actually pretty good. And now we're looking back and see, you know what, that Paldea Evolved wasn't so bad.
Many of the sets were, but it was overprinted and it wasn't making money, and the cards that we were opening weren't worth, and everyone's super consumed with, am I making my money back or am I breaking even, right? And so that's always going to warp people's perceptions about how good sets are. Today people talk about Ancient Origins and Primal Clash like they're great sets. When those came out, the narrative was that they were bad sets because they weren't worth anything. And so it's one of those, even today there's tons of people that love Fates Collide and Steam Siege. And when those sets came out, they both had playable cards, so they were liked until they dove to below distributor cost on boxes, and then they were the worst sets of all time. So a lot of times the underlying value will skew that narrative. But if you look at like the first 4 sets of Scarlet and Violet, the art on those is exceptional.
Oh yeah, it's amazing,
great. But there wasn't, the chase didn't feel as fun. And I think that's where people tend to forget that a lot of what makes these products really good are the narratives and the cultures that surround them, and kind of the bigger ecosystem that ties back to the cards themselves. And when that ecosystem is a little weaker because of the values aren't as good, or people don't want it as much, or there isn't as much content to make or whatever, then the sets kind of get a bad rap. And that can, and that's something Pokemon has to be really cognizant of, that is very different from other trading card games, is that they almost have to manage this collectible versus playability balance that a lot of other games, it's, if we don't have playability, like even Lorcana, some of their weakest sets are the ones where the cards themselves just have not been very playable. And so, it also gives them a way to kind of get away with things that normally they wouldn't, right? You can print a set with only one really good Pokemon if it's going to be chock full of good playable cards that people will want. And if you don't have those, you better slap a Charizard and a Mew and a Pikachu and a bunch of other stuff in it, and make sure
that it 151,
and it will sell. And so, it can be a double-edged sword for them, and they have to navigate that. And it's pretty interesting that
it's amazing to watch. I did a video a while back about cycles of Pokemon. I was looking over the years, and if you can see trends.
Oh yeah, Pokemon is unbelievably
very clear
by block. Yeah.
We got one here from Jackson, which is actually quite good, Jackson. I appreciate the question, because when I did my research, you were so hyped about One Piece. You even at one point thought it might take me back into traveling. There we go.
Yeah.
Traveling and doing TCG again. But I didn't hear too much more about it. So give us the rundown. What happened?
I started playing it when it came out in Japan.
Yeah. Your wife started playing, right?
Yep. My wife and I both started playing. Some friends started playing. We started grinding it. I was like, I'm going to carry this game. This game is going to be huge. Got set up with a completely new distributor to carry it. Luckily got in early on that. So I got pretty decent allocations, but I was going to play it too. Like, this is my comeback. I had always said,
That's what
I will never play another card game. I just don't have the time again unless One Piece gets a card game. One Piece got a card game and it's good. Bandai has really transformed their company, kind of like pre and post COVID. I think what they're doing is unbelievably impressive. I think whoever is directing at Bandai is doing an unbelievable job. They have some of the most gorgeous cards on the market. Their games are extremely fun. Their OP system is very healthy. I have a lot of respect for what they're doing over there. And One Piece was great. So as soon as I played it, was like, this game is good. I was hooked. And my wife was into it. We both watched One Piece. For the longest time, she wouldn't watch One Piece. And I was like, come on, just start it. If you watch 50 episodes and you don't like it, we'll drop it. So we did. And then she's watched all 1,100
50
now.
episodes? You better watch 50.
Hey,
not 2,
50,
not 3.
Okay, it's 1,100. That's a small percentage. Give me less than 5%. And so we traveled. We played locals a bunch. And then we actually traveled down to Texas for a regional and played. I got really hooked when the first online tournament they ever ran was a limited deck battle is what they called it. And you took your super pre-release decks, you could take 2 of them and combine them together of the same color.
Oh, nice.
And I grinded through that and I went 8-1 and I got top 8. And that was when I was like, all right, baby, we're in this thing. And so I played it, because they have online events. That's great for me. I can play right from my own home with my webcam. Super sweet. I already have the camera. I have the setup. Good to go. So I've done a few of those, but then we went in person because we had some friends we wanted to meet that played for the first time. And we all went down to Texas and that was a great time. And then life just caught up and just got busy and haven't been able to play. I still follow it. I still follow the meta. I still love it. It's just one of those things where it's like, all right, I got to be realistic. I'm not going to go be a One Piece pro. Although, man, their trophy card prices, you could be. You asked me earlier about where was kind of, did I ever think I could? There are people that are making careers out of playing trading card games today. Lorcana, you've got Mickey selling at $30,000. The world, nobody has revealed what the world's Luffy sold for. But it's estimated that it went over 6 digits. We do know that there have been confirmed 6-digit trophy card sales in One Piece. So there's people making, very good money playing these games. And if you can be a top player consistently, there's a lot of money there. And so that, that's a really cool opportunity that the ecosystem around competitive trading cards has grown to the point where the IPs that are on top of them can support people's livelihood. It's just another way that this hobby is now giving back to people. And, Squeaks Jr. will win OP regionals for Daddy. God bless. Hey, I hope someday little Roman, my son, wants to play card games. If he does, I will fully support him. If he does not, I will fully support that as well. But that would be super sweet to get to cheer my son on in a regional event sometime. So 0-9, 9-0, we don't care. That would be awesome.
We'll see. Time will tell.
Yeah.
Well, don't worry. We'll have Ethan, get him caught up on Pokemon when he gets ready.
He can teach. By that point, he can teach him. Yep.
Exactly. All right, the next 2 I want to actually talk about individually because I want to hear your thoughts. So the first one is GameStop's attempt to really take over.
Ooh, good one.
Not just the recent news of now doing PSA submissions and stepping into that market, but the concern overall, at least from my small vantage point, of the impact on actual LGSs that are trying to be there. And I'm worried about what they could do if they were successful. GameStop, that is. What are your thoughts on their recent moves over the past year and a half and where do you think they're going next and the impact on our stores?
That it's a great question. You know, when I look at GameStop, I really look at where they were at pre-COVID, which is that they were heavily struggling. Their stock price was bottoming out, and bankruptcy was looming on their door. And they got bailed out by stonkers, right? They got arguably one of the biggest consumer bailouts of all time via, GME stonk hype to the moon. That doesn't change the underlying fact that they did not have the direction of how they were going to save that company. They have burned through upper management, like high level corporate management of that company since then. And we've seen them, they're throwing stuff at the wall at this point. I love GameStop. I have so many memories of GameStop over the years, EB Games before that, and the merger, all that. Like, I'm a huge fan of GameStop. I know the memes, the trade-in values. I was the kid trading in my stuff for the values. I think the world without GameStop would be a sad world. GameStop's probably one of the few major entities that are keeping physical media alive for us. And if they go away, I think the push to digital becomes that much easier, which is something I don't want. I like that we own our stuff, and digital we don't. They're all licenses.
Right.
So to bring it back, though, the problem is they have not solved how do we take this into the future, right? They tried to bring retro games back, and they have recognized that market is not large enough to fully sustain their full operations of like a GameStop beside every Walmart in the country. They've tried to do, cards before, historically, even before graded cards. They tried to do just carrying cards, right? For the longest time, GameStops didn't carry cards. Now we've seen that they have tried test models of LGSs like to play in stores. It's just most of the GameStops that are built out are not large enough to hold full scale play nights. But now we're seeing that they're starting to double down in this industry. They did graded cards where they want to buy them from people and sell them. They're definitely working through the struggles of understanding that and recognizing, I think, the knowledge lift that goes into being able to operationally do something like that. And huge. You really need an expert in every single one of your stores, and the difficulty of finding that to do it efficiently. And I think this is the next effort of, okay, well, if we can't get an expert that's going to be able to sit and sift through these cards and do all of this until the data is there on a lot of this stuff, what can we do? Well, we can partner with PSA. We can make it to where we don't really have to do anything other than just take a picture of the stuff. I watched Leon Hart's video, take a picture of the stuff, send it in. They'll do the authenticity, say if things get rejected, and then people pick it up from us. We make a couple bucks on a card. That model might work for them. I think there's going to be pitfalls there too, right? You take a picture of a bunch of cards. What happens when there's a dispute of, well, that's not the card that I sent. That's not the Charizard I sent. Mine didn't have a nick on that corner. Well, maybe your employee stole it. Maybe your employee did whatever. I think there's going to be a lot of obstacles there that are going to have to get tackled. I think that their biggest hurdle is consumer mentality, right? The collective grading communities have been heavily burnt by middleman services. You connect that then to a corporate entity that sees you as a line on a spreadsheet, and that is that's not going to instill any confidence. In fact, the only middleman services at this point that instill confidence are people that really give you like white glove service, right? And treat you like an individual, not just like another line. And GameStop is pretty much the opposite of that. And so they're really going to have to rework their whole brand image to pull this off. What I would say, I think they're going in the right direction. This industry, hobbies, trading cards, tabletop gaming, is exploding. Anyone that believes we are on a pullback is not paying attention. We may not be quite where COVID levels were yet. I believe we will return to COVID levels that are not pandemonium induced. And then we're really going to be cooking. This is really going to be a healthy industry. And
that will be the new baseline.
Yeah, I think we're already on track. I mean, look at all, I hate saying this because it makes me sound like a crypto bro, but like the institutional investment that's coming in, massive amounts of money are flooding in all kinds of businesses and companies, and all the live streaming that's being formed, and fanatics, and they're all trying to, somewhere, some internal consumer report said live streaming is the future of sales. It's QVC on steroids, and we all need to get in on it. And they are all dumping floods of money into it. GameStop would be smart to just start selling their inventory through live streaming. That would be another thing they could do. But they recognize this is the industry that's going to catapult that. And so them trying to figure out how to get a piece of that, it's better to be early and not necessarily be in the exact position than be in the right position and be late. And so they can always pivot and adjust as things go and grow. But what they're going to learn, the same way I've made mistakes and learned from them, that's allowed me to pivot. What they're going to learn from these mistakes will allow them to be in the right place at the right time when they do nail it. And I think if they are going to save that company, especially as these publishers are not going to stop pushing towards digital media, this is where they have to go. And so where does that leave the LGS? Not great. Because if they do nail this, and if they can get it where you go to your GameStop to play, it's going to be a lot easier for publishers to want to partner with a GameStop where everything is very automated and system and coordinated and all that than trying to partner with little individual LGSs and do all these things. It's going to squeeze the margins out because they're going to cannibalize it on a massive, massive scale. And, you know, this is something I talk about to people a lot, not to like dive too deep, but we are on the, you know, no too deep podcast. So, you know, this is how industries go when they grow. The optimization will happen, and it's going to make the market more efficient. And where a lot of people right now are making their money is in the inefficiencies of the market. And as those close up, people are still going to make money. It's going to be at the top. You know, the people that are going to make the most off of somebody live streaming on eBay a card that then they send to PSA for the partnership that then gets sent right back to eBay and gets sold through eBay and never touches that person's hands before they sell it to the next consumer. The people that made the most money there were eBay and PSA. It was not the end consumer. It was not the person that live streamed it. It was the people. It was them that sit in the middle. And that optimization is exactly where they want it to go, right? The less people that have to touch that card other than them, the more money they make. And so everything's going to push in that direction. And GameStop does have the actual operational infrastructure to help close some of those gaps. They are a great partner for PSA. PSA loves that because what they have is they have a foothold to a completely untapped demographic of people that right now nobody else in the industry has the ability to capitalize on. And it's the ability to get people's cards in person impulsively. Right. And that's why middlemen for the longest time were so valuable to these grading card companies, because they could do their foot marketing for them and they didn't have to do it. Right. PSA can't go put up 3,000 stores and mobilize all of those card acquisitions in. They can't. GameStop already has that infrastructure. If everyone sits and knows I can just submit my cards to GameStop and it's easier, just as cheap and efficient, and it's going to be reliable and get it back, why would I ever do it myself? Now, that cannibalizes everything. All these people doing middlemen grading services are gone because there's a GameStop on every corner in this country. You know, if that efficiency exists, why would I ever do it myself? Why would I spend my money on that time to do it myself when I can just have them do it for just a tad more? And eventually they'll connect it to eBay. They'll just sync it right up. You can just sell it right there. And actually you just come back, you drop your cards off, you just come back to GameStop and pick up a check at X date. That'll be eventually how, and these things will just start cycling. And that's why so many of these companies wanted vault services, because where is the real value lies in the equity of these cards. And if you vault them, you hold the equity. All the money and the fees that transact around still root back to the equity of the physical objects. And that's why the vault services are so important, because it facilitates all this infrastructure that connects to it. If you have the equity there and then you pigeonhole it in where, oh, I've got to pay a fee to get it out, or I just sell it through this platform and I give up a little fee to them and it's way easier because I'm already taking a cut than if I have to get it out. So I'll just sell it through them. The vault thing was genius. This whole thing has been a plan in motion for years. I know I'm like, here's the tinfoil hat. But like it has. The vault was the first domino of allowing all of this infrastructure to take place. And all it's doing is squeezing the margin to the conglomerates. And the people that are individuals trying to do this, the one-person businesses, they're going to have to adapt or they're going to get squeezed out. And so a lot of the people that you see today that are saying, there's no money, the hobby's hurting, there's not money to be made, I can't find a lick, I can't do whatever, they feel that way because they're getting squeezed out right now. Like that, the margin, look at the margin, modern stuff. I mean, they are squeezing out every day. People are going to start flipping cards for 10 cents at a time. But if I can literally just load up a 7K, put it through your system and make 10 cents, that's $700. If all it is literally putting cards in a box and giving it to you, I'll do that for $700. That doesn't make sense for me to do it if I have to do all that individually at 10 cents a card. PSA doesn't care if it's 10 cents a card. Do you know how many cards PSA churns? They make 10 cents a card and they churn 10 million cards a year or 100 million cards a year, whatever. There's a lot of money there if that's all 10 cents profit, right? And now my guess is Nat Turner wants to make a little more than 10 cents a card. But the point is, like, you know, you look at other industries where they're highly efficient and the margins in those industries, and that's where it gets to. Look at Amazon, pennies on product. There's products they'll sell to take a loss if they believe it's going to get a consumer to put 2 more products in their cart.
Yep.
And it's the Amazon model, and we're pushing more in that direction. Now, do I think we're going to end up like Wall Street and you have to have billion-dollar fiber lines to be able to like sell your cart? No, but you know, sports has had tons of these efficiencies for years. And that's why the sports market has gotten harder. The reason sports works so well is because you have the volatility of the players themselves. And, you know, oh, is Lamar going to throw another touchdown? Is he going to be the MVP this year? And so you can make a lot on the speculation aspect. It's also speculation's the hardest part for these companies to replicate, right? The knowledge. It's GameStop's not going to put a bunch of speculators in and start hoarding cards and holding them back, hoping they go up in value. That completely contradicts their business model. But they will bring experts in. Like, if you've ever wanted to work in this industry, not you, but like people, this is the time, because these companies are desperately trying to find people that are knowledgeable and experts in this stuff. Because it's not like you just go on LinkedIn and find a trading card expert. The amount of people in this hobby that have a LinkedIn. I was talking to Nostalgianomics this past weekend at Collecticon, and he was asking me about this. I was like, how many people in this room right now do you think have a LinkedIn? I bet it's like 50 or less. And there's probably 10,000 people in that room. Where do you think all these major corporations are looking for talent to hire? It's not on Facebook groups. It's the only place they know, LinkedIn, right? Look at why John, Pokemon Radar, is a great example of why he's thriving so hard. Look at some of these other people that are thriving really hard in the industry. They all have LinkedIns. They're all talking to these people because this is where the money's flowing in. That's how they're finding their way up this ladder. So yeah, if you've ever wanted to work in this industry, that's where you go. I know we're totally tangenting off GameStop.
No, I love it. I love it. Yeah.
GameStop is just a great example of all of these massive moving parts that are changing the landscape of how this industry is going to look in 10 years, which should give you a lot of confidence that this industry is on a path of growth, because companies don't invest billions of dollars into something that they believe is going to fail.
So get your LinkedIn ready.
Get it ready, baby.
Adjust your business model. I love you. No, but it's a very good point. And I think the perspective that this and the things leading up to it, to your points, even around Vault and all the way up to now, you know, GameStop taking in PSA cards, it signifies a ton. And you even made the comment there, which is actually the next point I was going to make anyway. So it's a beautiful segue. And even the investments into live streaming, and all the people that we know are either doing it, about to do it, or have been the pioneers in it.
Or trying to sell to someone doing it, or be their person doing it, or like, I'm going to give you my stuff to sell for.
Right.
Yeah, everyone's trying to get some aspect of that 100%.
Yeah. So with that in mind, there was a comment you made a while back, and it was funny because you said this before eBay Live was even a thing. Your statement was, all of these companies will fail. All these live streaming companies will fail. All of them. And you made one exception in your explanation, and it was eBay, because they have the infrastructure and they have the foundations built. And then here we are. They're live, eBay Live.
Yeah.
Do you still have that same perspective that they all will fail? eBay will be the one left standing? Do you now see?
Here's what I would say. I would say at the time, there were two prominent ones, Whatnot, and then the thought that eBay is going to come in, right?
Yeah.
And I was a firm believer that I did not believe that Whatnot would survive, mainly because of their choice initially to be mobile only and not provide any support for desktop. I get that most consumers today use mobile phones. It is not the most serviceable to live streaming if you are the streamer, and you are just still cutting out a major segment of your population. It's also just a massive hill to climb, right? You have to build all that infrastructure from scratch.
Yeah, it's huge.
I will give massive props to Whatnot. They have absolutely proven me wrong. I think Whatnot, I think their odds of sticking around now are pretty high. I think Whatnot, I think they had a massive hill to climb. I think I would still, in hindsight, be critical of it from where I was looking with the information I had at the time. I think they climbed the hill. I think that Whatnot is absolutely massive. I think they are a juggernaut in this industry. And I think that they're going to continue on. Beyond Whatnot, I will say that what eBay has done so far has slightly disappointed me for the resources that they have as opposed to some of their competitors. Yeah, I think that there's a lot of industry data now, and you could just talk to the right people to operationally push a lot of the things forward that you need to. Now, let's be honest, though, they're a Fortune 500 company. Getting anything done quickly and efficiently is not going to happen. And so I don't think that all of that falls on necessarily them or the teams that are doing it. I think there's probably just a lot of like, we want to do this thing. All right, we need to get 38 approvals to do it. We got to run it through a shareholder meeting. We got, I think it will come. eBay has also proven that they are one of the most formidable companies to adapting to trends over the years in selling. That platform has managed to adapt. It's managed to survive every other auction company at Bonanza back when they were going to be the competitors to kill eBay. Now nobody even knows what that is. They like eBay will absolutely, I think, crush it. I still am reserved on many of these others because at the end of the day, as we've watched tech evolve over the years, social media platforms and things, you'll generally see one fade out as another one comes in. Like we'll get to that point where it's kind of like the market share is capitalized on, and like your MySpace has to go away for Instagram to be able to take stage, right? Your Facebook has to start to trend for TikTok to rise up, those types of things. And it's always going to be this grab at market share. Eventually that market share is going to be captured, and the amount of companies that want to do live streaming right now, I'm not sure that there will be enough market share to grow around. Now, part of that's going to be if they can grow how many people buy from live streaming, right? If every person eventually is buying live streaming, oh, I need milk. I'm not going to go to the store. I'm just going to bid on it right here on my thing. Like maybe, right? But I think what a wild world that would be. But I don't
want to live in that one.
Yeah, same. You don't get to eat today because you didn't want it bad enough. Don't want that. But I do think that I still am firm that most of these companies will not make it. I think that's true of anything. If you look at all the companies that were hyped during the .com bubble and how many of them survived, and how many of them survived that were the ones that people thought were going to survive. And I think the same thing is, I think it's just an extension of tech, right? It's an extension of how many of these tech companies are going to come out on the other side of this great tech growth, and be the, 40, 50, year juggernauts, lifetime juggernauts that are Microsoft and Apple and these other companies. And I think live streaming is no different, right? Now Fanatics has their own live streaming. Fanatics has a massive foothold. They have all of sports at their disposal. That doesn't leave a lot of room, right? Whatnot, that was kind of first mover advantage. eBay, Fortune 500 company, largest auction house in the world, advantage. Fanatics, access to all the sports. Every other company that wants to do live streaming, where are you positioning yourself to capture an audience that's not being captured in one of those buckets? And I think that's probably why early on, when my belief was, okay, it's eBay and Whatnot, of why I was so critical of nothing's going to survive other than eBay, is how does Whatnot really capture anything here? Because it was inevitable that eventually Fanatics would jump on things too.
Yep.
And luckily they leveraged their first mover advantage. They were extremely quick. They were extremely efficient. They overcame some of the hurdles. They got the desktop support. They got a lot of these features built in. They talked to their streamers. They made sure that streamers got the features they needed. They built the efficiencies to make it the most convenient platform to use. And they leveraged their first mover advantage really, really well. And they deserve all the success that they have. But that being said, I'm still hesitant on how many of these things can survive, because we're going to see more. We're going to start seeing live streaming through all kinds of platforms and stuff, and Facebook and Instagram. And we already see it, right? TikTok Shop, right? They're another one that's popping up. And so only so many of these will be able to survive at the scale that these companies are going to need it to survive to make their investments into it justifiable. And so I guess if I was a live streamer, I would diversify is what I would do. If they don't have exclusivity agreements, I would diversify. That's what I would do.
Do you think live streaming's here to stay?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I think, yeah. what sells people more than, like, why do people buy at brick and mortar today instead of online? Impulsivity, right? They want it now. I want it now. If I can go to the store and get it versus like having, like, this is why brick and mortar is so threatened by Amazon. If they can get me something in 2 days or 1 day, that really hurts brick and mortar because people can wait 2 days or 1 day as opposed to the 7 days it used to be. Now, like, if Amazon gets same day, how does Walmart compete with that? Right? This is why Walmart's starting a trading card thing. This is why eventually they're going to want to do lives. Eventually Target will want to do the same thing. And it's absolutely here to stay because it gives you the impulsivity of spending your money right now. I don't have to get in my car and drive to the store to spend my money. As Dan Ketchmall Collectibles likes to say,
I'm allergic.
people are allergic to their money and they want to get rid of it. And that is 100% true. And it gives you that. I can sit in bed before I go to bed and spend $4 I didn't intend to spend that day and then go to bed. And Walmart in person doesn't give you that, right? GameStop in person doesn't give you that. GameStop will start live streaming at some point, whether it be through creators or some accessibility or hiring. I don't know what it'll look like. And it'll continue to iterate. I think what live stream selling looks like today is not the same as what it looks like in 5 years. You know, I think there could be a world where someday eBay has hired reps that you can plug your store into their thing and they'll auction your items off and then you just ship them out to the person when they auction it for you and you just get assigned a time slot. Like, who knows? Like, there's tons of ways they could take those types of things. Now, at the rate they're going, that's probably not going to come. But it's one of those things where there's QVC, live shopping, things like that have been around for years and have proven that people will spend their money impulsively if given the opportunity. I think now we are now seeing in the modern era that corporations are figuring out how to leverage the internet to do that even better than what QVC and cable could ever do. So yeah, it's here to stay.
Do you think it's good for us?
Oh, absolutely not. No. Anything that allows people to impulsively do something where they don't have time to consider the ramifications are generally not great. Like, and I think everything is good in moderation, right? Like, I think that live streaming can be good. I think it's about where are your limiters, right? Are you allowing people to do wheel streams? Like, that's another reason that I was really critical of Whatnot. They've cleaned it up a lot. It's not that Whatnot hasn't went through some of their stumbles, right? And this is not. They had things to learn, right? There were wheel games. There were people gambling on there. There's been a lot of breaking scandals, all kinds of things that have been very public. And they've made the right moves to overcome those. But along with that is, what's the underlying root of all that? All that's facilitated because people get to impulsively spend their money. And these platforms are going to be built in a way that encourages you to spend your money. They want to make it as easy as possible, right? Amazon, if you've never read or watched anything about how Amazon's website is like literally built to separate you from your money, it's fascinating. And these platforms are doing the same thing, right? I saw the other day the thing that was so crazy to me. A streamer was doing sudden death auctions. They start at like 8 seconds, ticks down. There's no like anti-backup. So like if at 1 second somebody bids, the auction's ended. Like, it doesn't go back to 4 seconds.
Okay.
And they'll start at 8 seconds and they'll burn through 10 auctions in 2 minutes. And so you'll just see people jamming that button. You're gonna have 8 people jam that button. That thing's gonna go higher than what anyone intended to pay for it. They don't care. It's and it ends so fast. Okay, maybe I get the next one. Maybe I get the next one. Oh, I'm gonna sit around and because maybe the next thing coming up is what I'm gonna want. If you're a live streamer, the best thing you can do is not tell people the next thing coming up because they will keep anticipating that maybe the next thing is the thing they want. If they see that the next 50 things are nothing they want, they're either gonna go to somebody else's stream to spend their money or they're gonna get off, right? And that's why so many streamers have now figured out, I'll just grab a random card out of my box and auction that next instead of listing out everything that I'm going to auction that day, right? It's the same reason that streamers have figured out I'm going to do 1 pack break instead of breaking the whole box because 30 people aren't going to sit around and watch 1 box be opened waiting to spend their money when this other streamer, I can just go spend my money right now. 1 pack, I can wait for 1 pack to be open to buy the next pack, right? And then there's the chase that maybe that pack's even better because the previous one got open. All these things are built to just get you to spend your money. That's their job. The onus is on the individual to self-limit. Like, I do believe that. As long as what they are not doing is predatory, like tricking people into spending their money when they don't think they are, we as consumers are like I'm a firm believer, are responsible to self-manage.
So we're gonna see a Squeaks streaming service.
I thought about this so much. I really have, specifically Whatnot. I do think Whatnot right now is industry leading on streaming, and I would love to just like do it once a week, like one day a week or something, especially just for like inventory I don't want to list. Like, oh, I've got so many cards just like sitting beside me that it's like, all right, we're auctioning this one next. Now this one, 10-second auction. Like, let's just burn through them. I don't want to list them because like that to me, I take 80%, but I have no manual labor. It's like that whole thing I was talking about. How do I cut out this manual labor stuff over time? I'll pack the orders, but if that means I don't have to scan it, I don't have to list it, I don't have to sit and manage the questions back and forth. I just sit and pop 10-second things back. That's very appealing, even if I'm giving a margin to somebody. And so yeah, doing that one day a week just to move excess stuff that sits around because I'm never going to justify actually listing it. Yeah, maybe. So maybe is what I would say. If I can carve out the time, but you got to build an audience, right? And like that takes time, and that's a whole thing to it. So
Ray says, "Come hang out in my stream."
Okay. Hey, I like that. Is that a self plug? You guys going and checking out Shining Cards and Collectibles on stream?
Yeah, that's right. Check him out. Whatnot. He's there.
Yeah. I've been tuning into Thrifties some lately. Thrifty and Weedle streams, because I talk to Thrifty and Weedle a lot. I've been tuning into theirs. It's pretty cool what they're doing. I also like how like these ecosystems of streamers are starting to form, right? Like groups of, oh, we all talk each night. What if we all kind of stream? We'll be sister streams and we'll host each other. This is how it was back when I did Twitch, right? We all kind of had our little groups. We'd host each other, follows, like try to get our community to join others' communities, things like that. I think we're seeing Twitch culture start to now form. You don't want my money? That's okay. I wouldn't have given it anyways. I would have controlled my impulses. But I think we're see Thrift New. I think we're starting to see what happened with Twitch and how Twitch really exploded start to happen with live streaming now, just with selling instead of just watching.
Yeah. I think you're right with that. But I am curious to see where it goes.
Same. I'm shocked Twitch has not tried to leverage their platform into this yet, especially with Amazon owning it and the fact that Amazon has already built the infrastructure to do it because they do it with Prime Day is baffling to me that they have not created partnerships and leveraged Twitch, which Twitch has not found a way to monetize themselves profitably yet, to the point that they're continuing to have to raise subscription rates. And it's been a big controversy, push ads and everything. And they're seeing it happen in the industry right now of how they could monetize that platform in a way that could fund it for years and years to come. And it's capturing live streaming, and they have all the infrastructure there to do it. So, and eventually they will, right? And that's just another juggernaut in the pool. YouTube, right? YouTube Shopping's on there now. They're starting to build the integrations. All these things are happening. Like, Google's not going to sit back and let everyone else get a piece of the pie. They're going to figure out. And at what point can the ecosystem support all these people, right? That's what we have to ask. And so it'll be interesting to watch over the years to come.
I'm gonna sit back and just observe.
Yeah. Yep. I don't blame you.
Just gonna observe. All right, we'll switch it up. We'll get off the topics of news and potential fiery futures. Instead, maybe we'll turn it back to some of the personal side.
Sure.
One of the things that I think about a lot, and you actually mentioned it as well, not here today, but in a previous conversation, where we talk about, we come together through Pokemon, but we got to be careful how we tie our self-worth. Not only that, but our sense of joy to what we do here, right?
Yeah.
And I listen to a lot of other things outside of this space and just general, I would say, self-help and educational type stuff. And a lot of that speaks to finding and rooting your joy in a foundation outside of anything material as you start your day, you wake up, whatever that may be, and just enjoying what you have, not necessarily being complacent, not striving for more, but finding that joy and not tying it to, well, I got to have this today. If I don't, then my day's bad. Yeah. Well, if I don't have that raise, then my whole career is not worth anything. If I don't get that next X, then I've failed. And I'm a failure, right? So all these things tie back to, where are you rooting your foundation? So how have you navigated your joy in your life outside of the things that you do, the business, or how much you do or don't make in the year, and what you do or don't buy in your collection?
Yeah.
Where does your, especially now, because it's changed a lot for you here in the past, this year. And that, I know that's going to have a big impact for you as well. So,
yeah. So, I would say for many years, my success with this was deeply rooted to how not just fulfilled I felt in life, but how successful I felt as an individual. And that has started to transition, I think, as I've found more success. I've started to recognize that, like, it wasn't necessarily the success I was chasing as much as, like, what came from it. And not even the money aspect. For the longest time, I was obsessed with money, everything. Whereas I've gotten older, and as I've gained more of it, money is just the vehicle, right? There's tons of people that are just absolutely miserable, that have tons of money. And I never really understood that until I got more money. And I'm not like super rich, but we live comfortably. And it got to the point where I started to recognize that it's, there was an old quote about, like, money does not bring you happiness. Money brings you freedom. Freedom's what brings you happiness. And it's what you do with that freedom, right? That's going to bring you fulfillment. And that's why there's tons of people with money that don't recognize that, and they're unhappy. And it's why there's also tons of people that don't have money and still are super happy, because they've found contentment with what they have. They've found peace with what they have, and that brings them the freedom to just enjoy what they do have. And I think trying to really understand that and lean more into that has been really big for me. I got a really big wake up call this year. So to just dive into it.
Go ahead.
And my wife and I, I had mentioned she got pregnant last year in September. We'd been trying for years to get pregnant, and it just hadn't happened. We were kind of the point, maybe it never will, right? And we'll adopt or something like that. And it finally happened. Pregnancy was super smooth. Everything was about as easy as it could be, from what she says, right? She had a little bit of hip pain, one day of morning sickness. Everything else is about as good as it could be.
Easy peasy, yeah.
Until one day, she calls me, and she's going into work. And I know if she's calling me early in the morning, it's something's going on. So I answer, and she tells me, not to worry, but she was really red in the face. Some of her colleagues were like, "Hey, you should get your blood pressure checked," and they were worried that she was had preeclampsia. And that's, when your blood pressure just gets abnormally high, it can cause seizures. It can, it can be really bad for the baby and her. It's something you monitor. So they have to run some tests. We would get the test back the next day. Her and I had talked about it on the phone, like, should you even be working? But it's not stress induced. So, like, nothing's really, like, sitting on the couch or working is not going to change it at all. Right. And she's the doctor, not me. So she should be the one to make that call. But me being the, like, worried husband, I'm like, should you be working? Because, like, she's a workaholic. So she's, she's going to, I can tough anything out,
Right.
And so we had just kind of talked, don't take any chances. Right. And that she was going to keep working, but if anything felt weird. So at this point, though, she had kind of just told me, we'll manage it until it can't be managed anymore. And then they would just have to induce. The idea is kind of like around 38 weeks. You're not going to make it to 40 weeks, the due date, but you'll make it to like 38 probably. We were at 30 at this point. This is like 8 a.m. She calls me at 5:15, 5:30. She's getting out. She has a patient to deliver that night. So she's going to go to the hospital, get them set up for the induction, and then she'll come home after. So, we hang up the phone. I tell her, great, love you, talk to you later. I'm in the shower, and my phone rings, and I see that it's her. I'm like, oh, she probably forgot to tell me tell me to feed the cats or something. So I don't answer right away because I'm showering. And then she calls 2 more times, like, immediately. So I, like, jump out of the shower, still wet and everything, answer the phone. She's like, hey, you need to get to the hospital now. So I, like, just put my clothes on, like, still wet, jump in the car, go to the hospital. I call her on the way there. I'm like, is this, like, run red lights to the hospital, or is this, like, just get to the hospital? She's like, don't run red lights, but get here. So I get there, and they, do some tests and everything, and decide that it would just be safer to deliver that night. So here we are, 30 weeks. And to give you perspective, the night before Sunday night, a little tradition my wife and I have always had is we'll get junk food at the gas station or something when a new TV show we want to watch comes out, and we'll binge watch it and eat junk food, and late into the night. And we hadn't done it in quite a while. And so that Sunday night, the night before, this was a Monday, we had done that. Like, we should do this one more time. There was a show coming out or whatever. We should do this one more time before, Roman comes in what would have been June. And at that same time, the next day I was a dad. And that was crazy So we're going to have to transfer her, and then we'll do the delivery there. He'll have to be in the NICU because he's a preemie. Hopefully we'd get out at 34 to 36 weeks. They couldn't even transfer. They just deemed it was actually just better to have the transport there for him, and that she'd have to deliver there. So now we're like reeling with this, like she's going to have to stay here. And now they've got her on a magnesium drip, right, for her preeclampsia, because she was preeclampsia. And, they ended up having to do a stat C-section. He had to get transferred. We had to stay there. And then once she finally got out after a day and a half, we went there. That day it got worse. He got transferred again. We ended up living in the Ronald McDonald House for 47 days. So he, in his first day of life, first day and a half of life, he got transferred twice. He lived at the Ronald McDonald House for 47 days away from home. So obviously this is very different than how we thought everything was going to go. And something that we had tried for so long, dreamed about, and you don't realize all the things that are now not going to happen. All the, like, it wasn't just about, is he going to live and be okay? And just to give everyone the clarity through the story, he is great. He is thriving. He is doing awesome. And he's so cute as a button. But, it's not just that. It's, you're already mourning. You're mourning the loss of, we never got maternity photos. We never got to hold him the second he came out and get those photos. We got to like touch his little finger before they transported him. Things like that, and you have no time to process any of that because, doctors are asking you serious questions about things that you have to call on. And I don't know anything. Like, I am just absolutely not the person to do any of this. Whereas my wife knows everything there is to know. And so now she's carrying, like, what a champion, stat C-section, day and a half later, is literally walking through a hospital, now went through 3 hospitals now, and is making calls and doing what she has to do. And just an unbelievably strong human being. Never complained once about pain or anything. It had to have been an immense amount of pain. It's because getting a stat C-section, they just pour betadine and cut, right? That's just like an abdominal surgery at that point. And she never peeped a word of complaint ever at any point. Just an absolute, just blessing, unbelievable human being. Anyone that has met Britt knows how great Britt is. They don't know how great Britt is. Just an angel of a human being. And anyone that's ever met her just knows how selfless she is. But if there is ever a testament to just like unbelievable person, it was this. Just through thick and thin. I mean, what she has done to get him to where he is. And so all of this, bringing it back to your question, has given me an unbelievable perspective of what it means to be successful, to care about your time, to care about your family, the people around, what really matters. And it's why now when early with this context, a lot of my early responses that seem more like I'm just morally preaching probably make a lot more sense now. Maybe I wouldn't have answered things the same way 2 years ago. But I literally sat there and, there was a time in the second hospital, not to get like too dark into it, but where like they you can't touch anything, you can't touch, and then they come up to you and it's let's take some photos. Let's do, what that means. You know that what this is implying. And it hits you. So when you come out on the other side of that and you don't have to face worst case scenario, that is such an unbelievable blessing that it just makes so many other problems. Just, you realize how
they disappear,
insignificant that stuff is. I think back to all the time that I got caught up in like YouTube drama, and it's just like, what an absolute waste of time for everyone involved. And also just a lot of like, we're better people than that. Like, we are people that should bring each other together. Like that's what this hobby's all about. And it really puts that stuff into perspective. Because in that moment, every dollar bill I had, I would have traded it. Every single one. I would have traded every dollar bill I ever made. If I had to sit and live homeless and figure it out, I would have figured it out. You know what I mean? Like, because that's what mattered. I wanted him to walk out of that
perspective.
Hospital. And there's tons of people that have lived through these. Like, we had so many people that reached out to us that have went through similar stories and that have had struggles, some of which didn't come out on the other side and were still generous enough to share with us, which I can't even imagine how hard that was for them. And it's why, like, even right now, I get choked up just like talking about this, because it was hard. And luckily, and we're one of the lucky ones, right? It was this hard and we were one of the lucky ones. And I'm never going to shy away from sharing it though. Because first of all, if someone else is going to go through it, I want them to know they're not alone. and that they can always reach out to me and know that there's people there. We had so many people that I had met through this hobby that I never knew they went through something like this until we were doing kind of Facebook status updates for people just to keep them in the loop. We just kind of went dark, and they would tell us their stories and the solidarity that gave us of just hope and belief. And it was such a trialing time. It is the hardest thing I have ever went through. There were parts I still worked through just because we were there so long. Hospitals are great, but they kind of start to feel like prisons after a while.
Very much so.
You don't want to leave, but you kind of have to leave because you need to get away from it. And so if you're going to be there, I would work through it some just to give me some constant, something I could focus on. And I know that sounds crazy. It's one of those things, if you've been in it, you probably get it. The monitors for me, I'm a pretty obsessive person, and those monitors, man, I would just sit and hyper fixate on them. And to the point my wife would tell me, this is normal, these things happen. And it didn't matter. Every single time that monitor goes off, maybe this is the time it's not normal. And people just, they don't get that. And once you get a perspective like that, it really just, it opens your eyes to everything else you do in life and what matters. And it becomes very easy. When we came out on the other side of that, we kind of got our bearings and we finally started to get a routine. It was very easy to start cutting the crap out of life. Just, all right, this is a waste of time. This is not worth it.
Done.
I need to spend more time, with family. I need to do these things. I need to carve out this amount of time. One of the things I've done that probably pre all of this, if we would have just had a 40-week pregnancy and done, I don't know confidently, because I'm a pretty selfish individual. My wife's pretty selfless. That's why we go well together. I don't know if I would have done this. Now our bedtime routine with Roman, non-negotiable. 6:30-ish every night, he kind of goes to bed. We're first-time parents, so we do it up. He gets a bath, he gets a warm towel, he gets a lotion massage. We read him, she feeds him, I read him, all the stuff. That's non-negotiable. There is nothing, no package that needs sent, no meeting that I will take, nothing that's going to interrupt that. I will have that time. That is my time that I block out. And if anything interrupts that, I'll drop that thing first, because this is what's important. These moments are what's important to me, and I will never ever take that for granted. And it's not hard, because there's not a day that I don't think about sitting in that hospital and certain things. And I guess what I would say is, this is one of those things where it's hard to learn through other people's experiences. But if you're one of those people that can, hope you never have to go through this thing, and just take my word for it, that there are things in life that are just so much more valuable than what grade your card gets in a piece of plastic, how much money your card makes, if the arrow is going to go up or down. It's the people that you meet. It's the community. It's the journey. It's doing right by others. It's being the person you want to see in the world, because someday life is going to meet you, and it's going to give you that perspective. And whenever it does, you don't want to look back and be like I did and been like, dang, I wasted a lot of time over the years on just drama and things that didn't matter, that I refuse to engage it now. I just won't do it, because that's all time I could be with him. That's all time I could be with my wife or my family and those things. And it's really taken, I will probably always to some degree be a selfish person, but it's given me perspective of where I need to put a limiter on that as well. And, it's not to bring it down and everything, but it was a hard time, but it's really shaped who I am. And every question in this interview, it shaped my perspective on it now. If we would have had this interview 2 years ago, it would have been a lot more market talk, a lot more arrows up and downs. I would have spent far less time on the meaning of anything. And because it's changed my perspective on what matters. And, I hope nobody out there ever has to go through that. If you ever do, I don't care if we've never spoken a word, reach out to me. I'll talk to you. I never want someone in that situation to feel like they're alone. It's just, really try to strive and find what is important to you and what is important in life. And always actively push in that direction as much as you can.
I love it. Beautiful story. Thank you. And
Roman is doing great. Let me double down. He's cute as a button. We're to the point. He's learning to roll. He's doing the rollover. He's giggly. We're at the point now where he thinks everything I do is funny. He won't fall asleep for me because he thinks we're always playing. And I'm going to relish this, because I know someday this kid's going to be 14 and think that I'm the annoying dad. And right now, everything I do is super cool. It's the biggest ego
Enjoy
boost. So I'm just absorbing this.
Enjoy it.
Yeah. So.
Again, thank you for sharing. I know you and I were actually talking just a little bit, through that experience, and I'm so happy it came out on the other side in such a positive way.
Me too.
And I think that these new perspectives in your life will forever change you in a good way.
Yeah,
in a good way.
I agree
Yeah.
wholeheartedly. I agree. I think I not only do I feel like a better person, I think I will be a better person for other people in my life because of it. So.
And not that you weren't a good person before, but
sure,
it's
drastically helped me to self-improve as a person and want to continue on that path to doing so.
But well, on this personal track, and now we're talking about your wife and your son.
Sure.
You mentioned earlier you met your wife through Pokemon, but I didn't really get to hear like I guess the marriage story as you guys transition, because we kind of jumped from how you met. You dumped everything in her house.
Yeah.
How did you guys? Because now it's 10 years later.
Yeah.
So
like,
how did you guys?
So we met at a friend. So it's funny, actually. The two friends that introduced us that I had mentioned that were from the Humber Cats, they were originally trying to hook her up with my best friend. He was kind of pining after a different lady at the time, who they are also married now.
Pining. I heard that in a while.
So we went to a get together. We had already kind of told her, my friend Scott, we all know this story, so we're not leaking anything. Scott, we'd already kind of told her like, oh, Scott's really interested in Cassie, so like that probably not. They never told her that when we went to a get together. And I felt super bad about this. So, me trying to make everyone comfortable, have a good time. I spent a lot of time talking to her. We end up kind of hitting it off. We start talking, and then we ended up, like, hey, let's see where this goes. Let's start dating. I think this is around like December of 2014 or something. And she would be like, you should know that date. And then 3 months later, that was kind of the whole story. We moved in together. We got to know each other very quickly through that time. I think we both kind of fell head over heels for each other. She has tons of ambition, work ethic. She is the smartest human being I know. It is. Britt knows something about everything. Like, pop culture is her weak spot because she lived under a rock for so long with med school. But she is the type of human being that, like, you can have a conversation and she can just like pull out a factoid from like that she learned one time out of nowhere and just like interject in the conversation and like just so brilliant. And I respect that so much about her because it's brilliant in the way of like, I'm smarter than you all. It's just like, she is just brilliant, but like just wants to be one of everybody else. So selfless, so compassionate. So we hit it off. We dated for a few years, and then I'd kind of, there's a story about how I knew she was going to be my wife. And I used to hunt amiibos, the figures that Nintendo made. And because there was some money in amiibos back in the day, if you could find them. And so I used to hunt amiibos, and I got real good at this, to the point I could like track the shipping trucks to the actual like docks of the store. So I would know like when certain ones were going to land, and I could be there at like 3 a.m. and just like get an amiibo. Right. And I would always leave some for the children, but I would get my amiibo. Right. And we were looking, I was looking for Pit amiibo. I wanted all the amiibos. I was looking for Pit, and Pit was supposed to come out. It was going to be hard to get. And it was like 3 hours away up in Indianapolis. And I really wanted to go to this Meijer late at night, but I was like staying with her, and I was like, I'm not going to like make you go with me. And she's like, no, let's go. Let's do it. It'd be fun. And I'm just thinking like, okay, that's a little weird. She's like down to go hunt an amiibo at a Meijer at 3 a.m. But let's do it. Let's see how this goes. Right. And we track like all the different Meijer. The trucks haven't landed. I must have mistimed it, whatever. I look like an idiot. She's having a blast. It's like a treasure hunt for her. She's never really done anything like this. And finally, we call back to one of the earliest Meijers before we're just going to head back. And they're like, no, we got them. We unloaded them. We'll leave one in layaway for you, or in the layaway area at the front. So we go there, and there's one there. And she's like, well, we should go see if there's more of them. I was like, well, we got one. And she's like, she's like, no, let's go look. So I was like, okay, let's go look. So we're walking hand in hand. We've got a Pit amiibo. And this, Meijer, it's a long store. Yeah. We're about halfway to the electronics section all the way at the back. And this woman breaks handlock with me, doesn't say a word, and just full-fledged sprints the store. I've never seen her run in my life. I'm not running in this store at 3. There's not another human being around. If we make it in 15 seconds versus 15 minutes, nothing is going to change. But she full darts. And I get up there, and she turns around with the saddest look on her face. It was a fox amiibo. It had a blue backdrop too, and she thought it was a pit. She thought there was another one there. She thought she had like found the treasure. Wasn't it? And I knew in that moment I was going to marry this girl. Like, she can have as much fun with my dumb endeavors and things that I find fun is what I can. And that she can make, like, that she sees life is like an experience, and that it doesn't matter what we're doing as long as we're doing it together. I knew in that moment I was going to marry her. Fun fact, still have that pit amiibo to this day.
Do you?
Yep, I do. And so
you didn't buy the fox? You didn't buy the fox?
We did not buy the fox. No, it was all about the pit. So we kept the pit, but we did not buy the fox. We already had a fox at that point. So we left the fox. We bought the pit. I still have the pit amiibo to this day. And so at that point, it was I was going to propose. I built a ring online, ordered it. I had this whole plan, like, we're going to do an all-inclusive resort, blah, blah, blah. Something would always come up. She'd always get caught with some med school, something, some whatever. And finally, she had to go away for a month for a rotation up in Indy. And so we lived apart for a month, and I just watched the cats in the house and everything. And that month was so miserable that was like the double down of I knew I was going to marry this girl, that like I just could not wait for her to get home. And I had it planned that shortly after she got home, we were going to take that trip. And she called and told me like a week before, like, oh yeah, there's this med school thing that has to come up on this date. And she didn't know I had this trip planned. And I knew you can't like cancel that stuff because like how they graduate. So I just canceled it. And I was like, no, you know what? My wife loves the adventure. She also loves the zoo and animals. You'd go to a zoo and she's like a tour guide. She can tell you everything there is to know about every animal there and everything. And so our local zoo that she had been to probably a million times had this really cool like balcony that overhangs the water. And there's like flamingos on both sides that like surround it. And there's like trees and nature and fountains. And so we go early. I was like, hey, when you get home this weekend, you want to go to the zoo? Like, let's go do something fun. And, we kind of dress up to go out. And we're up there, and I'm like kind of doing my speech about how we've been together so long. And I'm getting ready to pop the question up there. There's nobody around because we went early. It's super great. And then she hits me with the, oh, look at what that flamingo's doing, and just starts to walk away mid-speech, man. I don't think she like fully realized like what I was getting to. And I like pulled her hand back and was like, that's great at that flamingo.
I need you to listen.
Finish here. And so I sped it up a little bit. I'm a little long-winded, as I'm sure everyone's gathered. And I get down on one knee and pop the ring. And then she's like, couldn't believe it. Just couldn't believe it. And loved it. It was exactly what she wanted. We ended up, obviously I proposed. She said yes, put the ring on her finger. We went and bought Dippin' Dots, and we walked around the zoo as she still played tour guide, except now we were the happy engaged couple that like is in one of her favorite places on earth. And we got to walk around the zoo for like 2.5 hours before
what a great story.
We're even there. And that's how we got engaged. We ended up getting married early for her med license, because it's a real pain to change your name after you get all your like numbers for all the pharmaceutical stuff and all that. But we ended up having a wedding then later that year with all of our friends and everything. Or like it was a little bit the next year, but that would have been in 2019. So that was about 4.5 years after we had met and started dating. And now here we are today, another 4.5-ish years later. It will be 10 years in next month from when we first started dating.
Okay. I was off slightly.
Yeah. So it's
nice.
Pretty cool. Yeah. She is my rock. She has been there through everything. She is actually unbelievably good with this industry. Her brain, because I run everything by her, everything. Right. Like she, not to like, knock anyone down. Britt could outperform like half this hobby. Like if she just like decided I'm just gonna start like Britt knows so much about this hobby, but she's always like super like nervous to like talk to people about it because like she doesn't think she knows a ton. But like I'll sit and ask her about like, man, I'm really thinking about doing this thing or whatever, and she's like, well, based on blah 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 blah.
You told me this like, and this and this on this day.
Who are you, woman? Like compared to like when I met you. But she's so great. She is just she loves video games. She is a fantastic mother.
I was gonna say, how has she enjoyed being a mother?
Well, everything she ever wanted it to be. You know, that's the thing I wanted to give her more than anything was the ability to be a mom. I know how important it was to her. For me, it was always kind of, I wasn't sure how I would feel being a dad, but I'm down for the ride. Like, let's see what happens. I love being a dad now, but for her, always knew, everyone knew she does delivery, she does OB, as well as family med. So she was like perfect for it, but she's so great with kids. And she has just went above and beyond. So like, for example, to get out of the NICU, your baby can't have any bradycardia episodes for like, I think it's like 3 days. And a bradycardia episode is like if it lasts longer than 5 seconds. Well, Britt literally sat and stayed in the NICU room 3 days straight, would only leave for the bathroom and to eat. With him, so that if he would start to have an episode, she could like help him recover from it to like get through that and be safe and everything. So that like, and make sure, because you also have to like be able to show that you can nurse for like the 15 minutes at a time for X amount of times. So she nursed for 3 days straight, every single, because they're on 3-hour schedules. So every 3 hours nursed for 3 days straight through all that. Like, just such an absolute champion. And that's just how she is in her whole life. Just always out to help people. Like, such a cool human. Like, I'm truly one of the luckiest human beings alive. Like, take all the card stuff aside, store stuff aside, getting to chase my dream on that. I have a fantastic, beautiful little boy and an unbelievably beautiful, amazing wife. I won the lottery, dude. Like, I won the freaking lottery.
I can see the smile, man.
Yeah, like, so cool. So yeah, it's pretty sweet.
What would you say you love most about her?
Oh man, there's a ton of, like, her selflessness, I think, is huge, because I think it's such a rare trait, just how selfless she is. Like, to the point almost when we first started meeting, she was kind of like almost doormat selfless to like a lot of friends, where she kind of had to like put up boundaries. But I think also just like how great of a mom she is. Like, I know all these sound super cliche. You know, I do.
It's true.
Little things about her that I like. I like that Britt's funny in her own unique way, but every once in a while, Britt will just say something that you just do not expect, and it will just put you in tears, just absolute tears, because it's just so unlike her. You don't know where it's coming from. She knows how to have a good time at a party. She definitely knows how to loosen up. And that's a pretty fun like aspect of her, where a lot of times she's very professional. She's mom, she's doctor, very she's strict, serious. To see that like other side of her, I think that maybe is one of my favorite parts, is that how most people perceive her on the outside versus how I get to see her every day. It's almost, again, like there's two sides to the same coin. And I get this special privilege to experience both of those when most people don't. And I think that's a pretty cool thing. So awesome
privilege. You guys planning on the second one?
Good shot, buddy, Thrifty says. So her and Thrifty got to hang out this weekend and have some margaritas. So they, she's unbelievable.
You planning on having a second one?
Maybe. After the way everything went with this, we're not sure. We've kind of briefly just talked about when we would need to have a more serious conversation on that. I think, there are some elevated risks with the second one. Originally, we were always kind of wanted to at least have 2. Like, I wanted 2, she wanted 3. I was like, man, what if we had 2 and adopted one? That'd be kind of neat. So we were kind of still working through that. Now it's more about just, really understanding kind of the risks and what's on the table of this and all of that kind of stuff. Not just for her, but the future kid, things like that. I think we would both like to. I just don't know, I think we're still kind of, I think we've done a lot of healing. We've definitely been very active about talking to each other through this whole thing, understanding that like we can't bottle things. We need to talk through it. I think right now, though, we're still just kind of in the phase of like, I think we'd both like to. I think we want to have that conversation. But for now, let's just enjoy these moments with him, and we'll kind of tackle it when we've got to tackle it. But it's at some point we definitely would like our probably a second and a third if possible. So.
Well, one of the things we do here at the end, Squeaks, is we talk about that perspective of the future in terms of family. What message would you like to leave with your son here for the future if he was to listen to this podcast? Hey, Dad was on this crazy podcast.
You want me to cry, man? Oh, man. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna try to get through this. I don't care what you do in life, what you enjoy, what your goals are, what you want to strive for. I will champion you in all of those things. I want you to be a good person. I want you to treat others right. And I want you to be happy. You don't have to like all the things I like. You don't have to do the things always that I want you to do. I want you to be your own person. I don't want you to be mini me. I'm definitely going to try to get you to play cards. I'm definitely going to introduce you to video games. If you don't want to do those things and you want to do ballet or you want to be a musician or you want to be whatever, I will be the first one that looks up how to do a triple Lutz or something. That's probably an ice skating thing, but whatever it is, I'll be the first one to figure out what instrument you need. I want whatever is fulfilling for you in life. I want to be your champion the same way that your mom was my champion. For me, I want to be that for you. I want you to know that I will support you in any endeavor that you ever do. You will have bumps in the road the same way that I have, the same way that your mom has. And we will be there for you through those the same way that our parents have been and our friends have been. Inevitably, you will probably disappoint us at some point in time. We are still there for you then. The same way that when you are victorious in your crusades in life, we will be there for you then. And that to just know that if you ever have a hard day, I will also be there. And I will be the shoulder that you can cry on. And that will never change. So that's what I would say.
Beautiful. Beautiful. My friend, we will all be leaving here one day. And hopefully we do it with that same smile you have right now on your face. Yeah. When you do, what do you hope to leave? What legacy do you hope to leave here in this hobby?
In the hobby?
Yes, sir.
That people understand the impact that I tried to leave. That they feel that I tried to make the hobby better, not just for me, but everyone around me. That I tried to help carry it for generations to come. That I tried to find ways to lift it up, and not have it just be what helps me right now and whatever happens after. And that I truly understand the privileged position that I am in, that my family is in, that a lot of which the hobby has provided me, and that I hope it can provide many, many people for years to come. And I hope that I can start to not only build the foundation, but the building blocks of those types of things for many other people to have those experiences for years to come.
Beautifully said once again, my friend. Squeaks, this has been a true pleasure. I can't thank you enough for the time. We ran it late, so I hope I didn't take away from any of the binge watching with the wife.
Nope, I loved it. Awesome. This has been awesome.
I really do appreciate also everybody here watching, listening now, afterwards. We really appreciate your time. As I always say, it's something we don't get back. So thank you for donating it to us here today. We look forward to seeing all of you on the next one.
Wait, I want one more word before you shut us off.
Please.
On the same note,
yeah,
I hope everyone that's watching now or everyone that will watch this VOD understands the incredible value that you and this podcast bring to this industry. Part of the reason that I not only wanted to come on here, but am willing to spend 3 hours and 42 minutes on a Wednesday night, I think it's Wednesday, is because I believe what you are doing for this industry is very good. I believe that you will become massive doing this, even if that's not your goal. I believe that you spread positivity and really good ethics that this industry heavily needs. And I think everyone out there, if you want to help the industry, one of the greatest ways you could serve this industry is making sure people are aware that this place exists, that these conversations exist, that you are doing this with these people, and that you're doing it in such a positive way. There's a lot of content that is made in this industry. There is not a lot of content that is made like yours. And it is truly a blessing. I don't know if you realize how much it is, but I do, and I think many others do. There is nobody that I have ever heard of speak ill will about your name. I don't think you understand how rare that is. And so I hope you can, through everything, through thick and thin, good times and bad, I truly hope you continue to do this. And I am more than happy to support you in doing this in any way that I can, because I think it's really good for the industry. So yeah, I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you having me on, and I appreciate all you do with it. So
thank you, man. Got me choked up here. Thank you, Squeaks. I really appreciate all the kind words, and I just hope I can do it justice, and I'm just happy to be a part of it.
Keep doing what you're doing, man, and you definitely will. Yeah. So
thanks, buddy. Everybody, again, deeply appreciate you. Have a great night. We look forward to seeing you all on the next one. Hope to catch you next week, guys. Have a great one.